Look around at the world we've built. It is a world designed for ease. With a tap on a screen, a meal arrives. With a spoken command, the lights adjust. We have engineered our lives to be as frictionless as possible, surrounding ourselves with conveniences that promise a happier, simpler existence. But here is the quiet, unsettling question that often arises in the middle of the night. Is this constant pursuit of comfort actually making us weaker? Have we, in our quest to eliminate all difficulty, inadvertently built a cage of our own making? There is a profound disconnect between the life of convenience we are sold and the deep human need for purpose, for growth, for a sense of earned accomplishment. It is a feeling that something essential is missing, that we are trading the vibrant struggle of a meaningful life for the passive comfort of a managed one. The ancient Stoic philosophers saw this tension with startling clarity. Even 2,000 years ago, they understood that the easy path is often the one that leads to a hollow existence. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who ruled one of the most powerful empires in history, penned these words in his private journal, a reminder to himself in the face of immense luxury and power. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is not a philosophy that shies away from hardship. It is one that embraces it. Stoicism does not promise a life free from trouble. It offers something far more valuable, a framework for transforming trouble into the very fuel for your growth. It is a call to choose the rocky, uphill path of mastery over the smooth, downhill slide of comfort, because it is on that difficult path that we discover our true strength. This video is an invitation to explore that framework. We are going to dismantle the myth that a good life is a comfortable one and rebuild a new vision, one rooted in the timeless wisdom of Stoicism. We will explore how to intentionally design a life that prioritizes mastery over comfort. This means understanding the core Stoic principles that give you the mental tools to make this choice day after day. We will delve into the crucial dichotomy of control, learning to focus our energy only on what is truly within our power, our judgments and actions, and letting go of the rest. We will discuss the transformative practice of voluntary discomfort, not as a form of punishment, but as a training ground to build unshakable resilience. And we will examine how to shift our focus from chasing external outcomes to cultivating an internal character of virtue and excellence, which is the true mark of a life well lived. This is a journey into a more resilient, purposeful, and ultimately a more flourishing way of being. It is a journey that begins with a single, courageous choice to stop seeking what is easy and to start pursuing what is meaningful. The cornerstone of a life of mastery is knowing what you can and cannot control. This is the single most important principle you will ever internalize, and it comes to us directly from the Stoic teacher Epictetus. He began his essential handbook, the Enchiridion, with this very idea, stating that some things are within our power and others are not. Within our power are our own opinions, pursuits, desires, and aversions. In short, everything that is truly our own action. Not within our power are our body, our property, our reputation, our status, and everything that is not our own doing. Think about the profound simplicity of that division. Your thoughts, your choices, your efforts, these are your empire. The results of those efforts, what other people think of you, the circumstances that arise throughout your day, these are not your empire. Trying to command them is like trying to command the weather. It is a guaranteed recipe for endless frustration and anxiety. Mastery, therefore, is not about controlling the world around you. It is about achieving utter sovereignty over the world within you. This distinction is the fundamental shift that separates a life of frustration from a life of empowerment. When you chase control over external outcomes, you are essentially handing your inner peace over to forces you can never fully command. You become a slave to fortune, your mood rising and falling with every piece of praise or criticism, every success or failure that life throws your way. This is the comfort trap, the desire for a predictable, favorable outcome that requires no emotional risk. But the Stoic path of mastery flips this entirely on its head. It says that your worth, your progress, your very character is determined not by what happens to you, but by how you choose to respond. It prioritizes the quality of your effort over the allure of a comfortable result. Mastery is found in the focused application of your will, right here, right now, regardless of the eventual reward. Consider two people facing a significant challenge at work, perhaps a major project presentation. The first person, operating from a place of seeking comfort, spends their energy obsessing over the outcome. They are desperate for the boss's approval, terrified of any critical feedback, and their entire sense of self-worth is tied to the project's reception. Their focus is external, on controlling the perceptions and decisions of others. This creates a tremendous amount of stress and often leads to playing it safe, avoiding creative risks for fear of failure. The second person, grounded in the dichotomy of control, adopts a completely different approach. They pour their energy into what they can control, the thoroughness of their research, the clarity of their presentation, the integrity of their work. They focus on delivering their absolute best effort, understanding that the final judgment is not in their hands. This person is calmer, more focused, and ultimately produces higher quality work because their mind is not cluttered with anxiety over the uncontrollable. The first person seeks the comfort of a guaranteed good outcome. The second person pursues the mastery of their own craft. So, let's bring this home. Where in your own life are you expending precious energy trying to control an external outcome? Maybe it's a relationship where you're trying to manage another person's feelings. Perhaps it's a business venture where you're fixated on a specific financial return. Or it could be as simple as your daily commute, where you get frustrated by traffic you have no power over. Identify that one area. Now ask yourself a different question. If you completely accepted that the final outcome was not yours to command, where could you shift your focus to your own actions? What would it look like to pour your energy entirely into the quality of your effort, into the integrity of your own conduct, and release the rest? This mental shift is not passive. It is the most active and powerful choice you can make. It is the first and most essential step in designing a life that prizes genuine mastery above the fleeting illusion of comfort. What if seeking comfort is making you weaker? It's a counterintuitive thought, but one that lies at the very heart of Stoic training. Just as a muscle that never faces resistance will atrophy, a mind that is constantly shielded from difficulty loses its capacity to endure. Our modern world, with its endless conveniences, is a gymnasium for comfort, but it provides very little weight training for our resilience. The Stoics recognized this danger with brilliant foresight. They understood that to build an unshakable character, you must actively and voluntarily engage with hardship. This is not a philosophy of masochism, it is a philosophy of preparedness. It is the deliberate act of designing small, manageable challenges into your life so that when life inevitably throws its larger, unforeseen challenges at you, you are not shattered. You are already strong. The Roman philosopher Seneca, a man of immense wealth and influence, was a powerful advocate for this practice. He would periodically engage in what he called poverty practice. He would dress in his roughest clothes, sleep on a hard bed, and eat only the plainest food for several days at a time. Why would a wealthy senator do this? In one of his letters, he explains the reasoning with stunning clarity. He writes, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" This was his way of vaccinating his mind against the fear of loss. By voluntarily experiencing a slight degree of discomfort, he was proving to himself that he could handle it. He was building a psychological immune system. The goal was not to live in poverty, but to liberate himself from the terror of ever falling into it. He was ensuring that his peace of mind was not held hostage by his material possessions. This ancient practice translates with remarkable ease into our modern lives. The principle is not about recreating ancient Roman conditions, but about identifying the small, padded corners of our own existence and deliberately roughening them up. It's about choosing the slightly more difficult option when the easy one is readily available, all for the sake of mental training. For instance, instead of a long, hot shower, you might end your morning rinse with 30 seconds of cold water. That initial shock is a masterclass in embracing something unpleasant without panic. You could practice intermittent fasting, not necessarily for dietary reasons, but to remind yourself that you can function perfectly well, that your will is stronger than your hunger. On a beautiful day, you might choose to walk to the store instead of driving, feeling the sun and the air, and accepting the minor inconvenience of time for the greater gain of presence and physical engagement. Each of these small acts is a rep in the gym of your mind. When you choose the stairs over the elevator, you are not just improving your physical health, you are making a statement to your own psyche. You are declaring, "I do not need to take the easiest path. I am capable of a little effort." This consistent, low-level training has a cumulative effect that is profound. When a real adversity strikes a stressful deadline, a personal disappointment, an unexpected bill, your baseline of what constitutes a hardship has been raised. The small annoyances of daily life lose their power to irritate you. The cold shower you voluntarily took has made you more resilient to the cold shoulder you might receive from a colleague. The walk you chose has strengthened your ability to persevere through a difficult conversation. You have, through practice, expanded your capacity for discomfort. So, the challenge for you this week is a simple but potent one. Identify one small, voluntary discomfort you can incorporate into your routine. It must be safe and manageable, but it should also be something you would normally avoid. Maybe it's leaving your phone in another room for an hour to sit in silence. Perhaps it's having a simple meal of rice and vegetables for dinner one night instead of ordering takeout. It could be taking a different, longer route on your walk to appreciate your surroundings without rushing. The specific act matters less than the intention behind it. The intention is to prove to yourself in a tangible way that you are stronger than your cravings for convenience. You are building a resilience that no external circumstance can easily take away. From a Stoic perspective, there is no true failure, only lessons. This is a radical reframing of one of life's most common and feared experiences. In our comfort-seeking culture, failure is often seen as a final verdict, a stain on our record that proves we are not good enough, smart enough, or capable enough. This fear of falling short is one of the primary forces that keeps us playing small, sticking to what we know we can do easily, and avoiding the very challenges that lead to mastery. We choose the comfortable path precisely because it seems to offer a guarantee against the sting of failure, but Stoicism challenges this entire framework. It asks us to shift our focus from the outcome, which is never fully within our control, to the quality of our effort, which always is. A setback, then, is not a judgment on your character, but simply data. It is feedback from the world, providing invaluable information about what works, what doesn't, and how you can adjust your approach. It is the essential raw material for wisdom. Marcus Aurelius offered a powerful mental tool for this shift when he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Let that idea sink in for a moment. The obstacle itself is not a barrier to your progress. It is the very substance of your progress. When you encounter a difficulty, it presents an opportunity to practice a virtue. A failed business venture is not just a financial loss, it is a training ground for resilience, forcing you to learn, adapt, and persevere. A difficult conversation that doesn't go as planned is not a social defeat. It is a chance to practice courage and improve your communication skills. Even a simple mistake, like burning a meal you are cooking, is a lesson in attention and patience. The Stoic sees every so-called failure as a specific, custom-designed exercise for building a stronger character. The comfort-seeking path avoids these exercises, but the path of mastery welcomes them as the most effective teachers available. Consider the story of Thomas Edison, a figure whose name is now synonymous with brilliant success. But his journey to inventing a practical electric light bulb was paved with what most people would label as catastrophic failures. It is said that he tried thousands of different materials for the filament, each one burning out quickly. A reporter once asked him, "How did it feel to fail 1,000 times?" Edison's reply was pure stoicism in action. He said, "I didn't fail 1,000 times." The light bulb was an invention with 1,000 steps. He did not see each extinguished filament as a verdict on his abilities. He saw it as a lesson. Each failure eliminated a possibility and brought him closer to the solution. He was focused on the virtuous effort of persistence and inquiry, not on the uncomfortable reality of repeated public setbacks. His mastery was not achieved in spite of his failures. It was forged directly through them. This mindset transforms the emotional weight of a setback. When you view an outcome as a final judgment, it carries a heavy emotional load of shame and disappointment. But when you view it as a lesson, the emotional charge changes to curiosity and determination. The question shifts from "what's wrong with me" to "what can I learn from this?" This is not about positive thinking or simply pretending that failure feels good. It is about a sober, rational assessment of the event. You can acknowledge the disappointment while simultaneously mining the experience for its hidden value. What did this reveal about your preparation, about your assumptions, about your methods? This reflective process is where courage and wisdom are cultivated. So bring this principle into your own life right now. Think of a recent setback, whether it was a project that didn't turn out as you hoped, a goal you didn't meet, or a mistake you made at work or in a relationship. Instead of replaying it as a story of defeat, actively reframe it. Ask yourself, what is the lesson here? What did this experience teach me about my own strengths or weaknesses? How did it force me to grow or adapt in a way I wouldn't have otherwise? What virtue like patience, perseverance, or humility did this situation demand that I practice? By doing this, you are not ignoring the difficulty of the experience. You are honoring it by extracting its full value. You are transforming an obstacle into your way forward, just as the Stoics advised. You are choosing to see the stumble not as a fall, but as a step in your dance toward mastery. This internal governance system for a life of mastery is what the Stoics called the discipline of desire and aversion. Think of your desires as a powerful river. Left to flow naturally, they will always seek the path of least resistance, carving a channel toward immediate pleasure and away from any hint of pain or difficulty. This is our default wiring, a survival mechanism that served us well in a harsher world. but in our modern landscape of abundant comforts, that same unchecked current can flood our lives, washing away our long-term aspirations. It pulls us toward the sugary snack instead of the nutritious meal, toward the distracting screen instead of the challenging book, toward the safety of inaction instead of the risk of a bold move. The Stoic project is not to dam this river completely, but to become its engineer, to use the tool of reason to redirect its flow toward what is truly good for us, which is virtue and excellence, and away from what is merely easy. The great teacher Epictetus put it with his characteristic bluntness, stating that the foundation of a happy life is getting your desires and aversions right. He said, happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle: some things are within our control and some things are not. He then connects this directly to our inner governance. If you think that you have control over things that are actually beyond your control, or if you attempt to adopt the affairs of others as your own, your pursuits will be thwarted and you will become a frustrated, anxious person. This is the core of the discipline. We must train ourselves to desire only what is virtuous and within our power, things like acting with courage, seeking wisdom, and behaving with justice. And we must train our aversion away from external hardships and toward the only thing truly worth avoiding, vice itself. The goal is to want what is good for your character and to be indifferent to everything else, whether it appears pleasant or painful on the surface. Let's make this practical with a scenario that will feel familiar to nearly everyone. It is the end of a long day. You are tired. You have a goal to learn a new skill, perhaps a programming language for a career shift or a musical instrument for personal fulfillment. This goal represents a path to mastery. On the table next to you is your phone, a portal to an endless stream of entertaining, effortless content. The desire for the immediate comfort of distraction is powerful. It whispers promises of relaxation and a numbing of the day's stresses. The aversion to the mental effort required for study is equally strong. It feels like a wall of resistance. In this moment, you are facing a direct conflict between an undisciplined desire for pleasure and a reasoned commitment to a meaningful goal. The choice you make is a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. Choosing the scroll is a surrender to the default current. Choosing the study session is an act of internal governance. It is your rational mind redirecting your desires toward a higher good. This discipline extends far beyond this one example. It applies to the desire for lavish praise, which can make us dependent on external validation, and the aversion to constructive criticism, which we need for growth. It applies to the desire for more money or status for their own sake, rather than as potential tools for virtuous action. Every time we feel that pull toward what is easy and that push away from what is difficult, we have an opportunity to pause and ask a simple but profound question. Is this desire aligned with my long-term vision of a flourishing life? Is this aversion protecting me from genuine harm, or is it just shielding me from the productive struggle that leads to mastery? This constant, gentle interrogation of our impulses is the practice. It is the daily work of aligning our deepest wants and fears with our highest values. So, take a moment to turn this lens inward. What is one specific desire for comfort that frequently distracts you from a more meaningful goal? Maybe it is the desire to hit the snooze button instead of getting up for that morning workout. Perhaps it is the urge to engage in gossip rather than having a substantive conversation. It could be the craving for another unnecessary purchase that provides a temporary thrill but derails your financial goals. Identify it clearly. Now, consider the flip side. What is the virtuous action you are avoiding because of the discomfort attached to it? By bringing this pattern into the light of your conscious awareness, you take the first step toward governing it. You begin the essential work of disciplining your desires, not to deprive yourself, but to empower yourself to pursue a satisfaction that is far deeper and more enduring than any fleeting comfort can provide. These daily routines are far more than just items on a to-do list. They are philosophical practice in action. They are the practical architecture that turns abstract Stoic principles into lived reality. While we often think of philosophy as something we read or discuss, the Stoics insisted it must be something we do, a discipline woven into the very fabric of our days. The most effective way to ensure your life is consistently oriented toward mastery, rather than drifting toward the currents of comfort, is to bookend your day with intentional rituals of reflection. These are not about adding more tasks to an already busy schedule, but about transforming ordinary moments, waking up and going to sleep, into powerful opportunities for self-direction and growth. The Stoics were masters of this intentional bookending. Each morning they would engage in a practice known as premeditatio malorum, which translates to the premeditation of evils. This sounds grim, but its purpose is profoundly empowering. It is not about pessimism, it is about preparedness. Before the day begins, you take a few moments of quiet to mentally rehearse the challenges you might face. You visualize potential setbacks, a difficult conversation, a project complication, a traffic jam. But crucially, you don't just imagine the event, you visualize yourself responding to it with virtue. You see yourself maintaining patience in the face of frustration, exercising courage when feeling fear, and demonstrating wisdom when confronted with confusion. This mental rehearsal is like a fire drill for the soul. When a real challenge arises, it is not a shocking, unprecedented disaster. It is a scenario you have already faced and mastered in your mind, allowing you to respond with calm clarity instead of reactive panic. Then, as the day concludes, the Stoics turn to an evening review. Seneca the Younger vividly described this practice in his letters, writing about how he would examine his entire day before sleeping. He would ask himself questions like, what bad habit have I cured today? What fault have I resisted? In what particular am I better? This is not a time for harsh self-judgment, but for honest, constructive assessment. It is the process of closing the loop on your daily efforts toward mastery. You look back over your actions, your words, and even your private thoughts, holding them up against the mirror of your Stoic principles. Where did you choose the path of virtue over the path of comfort? Perhaps you bit your tongue instead of gossiping, or you tackled a difficult task you attempted to postpone. And just as importantly, where did you fall short? Maybe you lost your temper in a minor irritation or sought validation from someone whose opinion shouldn't matter. The goal is to acknowledge both with equal detachment, learning from the missteps and reinforcing the virtuous choices, so that tomorrow you can begin again, slightly wiser. Implementing this doesn't require a complete life overhaul. A simple, sustainable morning routine might look like this. Upon waking, instead of immediately reaching for your phone, you give yourself just 5 minutes of silence. You sit with your eyes closed, take a few deep breaths, and ground yourself in the present. Then you set a single, clear intention for the day, framed not as a task to complete but as a virtue to embody. For example, your intention might be, today I will focus on acting with patience, especially in moments of delay or frustration. Or, today I will practice courage by speaking up in a meeting where I normally stay silent. This intention becomes your guiding star for the next 16 hours. In the evening, your review can be equally brief. As you lie in bed, you mentally scan through the day. You ask yourself 2 simple questions. Where did I live in alignment with my intention today? And where did I stray from it, and what can I learn from that? This entire process might take only 10 minutes total, but its cumulative effect over weeks and months is transformative. It builds the muscle of self-awareness and ensures you are the conscious author of your life, not just a passive character in it. So, the invitation for you is to make this philosophy active in your own life. What is one small, intentional practice you could introduce into your morning or evening to better align your days with your goals of mastery? It doesn't have to be elaborate. It could be as simple as leaving your phone outside the bedroom to create a space for that morning silence. It might be writing down one sentence in a notebook each night that answers Seneca's question, "In what particular am I better today?" The specific action is less important than the conscious commitment behind it. By designing these bookends, you are actively programming your mind for growth. You are creating a daily rhythm that consistently pulls you back to the path of mastery, ensuring that your life is not left to chance, but is deliberately and thoughtfully designed. The obstacle is the way. This famous Stoic phrase, popularized in modern times, captures one of the most powerful mental shifts you can possibly make. It means that the very thing standing in your path is not a barrier to be lamented, but the path itself to be embraced. We often fall into the trap of believing that a life of mastery would be smooth and unobstructed, a straight line upward towards our goals. We imagine that if we could just remove all the difficulties, then we could finally be the person we want to be. But Stoicism turns this notion completely on its head. It argues that a life without obstacles would be a life without the very materials needed to build strength, wisdom, and resilience. Challenges are not inconvenient interruptions to your journey. They are the essential curriculum. They are the gymnasium where your character is forged and tested. Marcus Aurelius, who faced immense political turmoil, betrayal, and the burdens of leadership, constantly reminded himself of this principle. He wrote in his Meditations, "The blazing fire makes flames and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." Another translation puts it even more directly, "A pyramid is built stone by stone." Likewise, our character is built challenge by challenge. Just as a fire does not complain about the log it must consume, but uses it to grow brighter and hotter, we are not meant to complain about the hardships we face. We are meant to use them. The obstacle, the difficult colleague, the financial setback, the personal loss is the fuel. Your response is the flame. The quality of that flame, whether it sputters and dies or burns with a fierce, steady intensity, is the measure of your progress on the path of mastery. The goal is not to have an easy life, but to have a life that is made strong and virtuous by the very things that made it difficult. This philosophy finds incredible expression in the life of historical figures who consciously embodied Stoic principles. Consider Cato the Younger, a Roman senator who became a symbol of unwavering integrity. He lived during a time of great political corruption and the rise of Julius Caesar's authoritarian power. Cato's entire political career was an obstacle. He was consistently outmaneuvered, his warnings were ignored, and he ultimately found himself on the losing side of a civil war. Yet he never compromised his principles. He used every single setback, every political defeat, as an opportunity to demonstrate the virtue of justice. His obstinacy, which some saw as a flaw, was in fact his greatest strength. He became a living example that sometimes mastery is not about winning the external game, but about mastering the internal one, maintaining your character even in the face of total loss. His story teaches us that an obstacle can be used to practice a specific virtue with such intensity that your very life becomes a lesson for others. In our modern world, we may not face civil wars, but we face obstacles that are just as potent for our personal development. Think of a dedicated nurse working through a grueling shift in an understaffed hospital. The obstacle is exhaustion and overwhelming demand. But within that obstacle lies the opportunity to practice profound compassion and patience with each patient, to find a deeper well of endurance than she knew she possessed. Or consider an entrepreneur whose product launch fails. The obstacle is public failure and financial loss. But that failure is the perfect opportunity to practice resilience, to learn humility, and to cultivate the creativity needed to pivot and try a new approach. In both cases, the individual who sees the obstacle as the way does not crumble. They engage, they ask not, "Why is this happening to me?" but rather, "What does this situation require of me? What virtue can I practice here?" This shift in perspective is an active, creative process. It requires you to look at a problem and see it not as a monolithic block of difficulty, but as a collection of potential virtues waiting to be activated. A traffic jam is an opportunity to practice patience. A critical comment is an opportunity to practice humility or the courage to seek truthful feedback. A difficult physical task is an opportunity to practice perseverance. The obstacle itself presents the specific training you need at that very moment. By reframing it this way, you take back your power. The external circumstance no longer controls your emotional state. Instead, you use the circumstance as a tool for your own growth. So bring this powerful idea into your own life right now. Identify one current obstacle that feels significant. It could be a strained relationship, a health issue, a project at work that seems insurmountable, or even a persistent bad habit. Now, instead of viewing it as a problem to be solved or endured, brainstorm how it could be used as a training ground. Ask yourself, what specific virtue does this challenge invite me to practice? If it's the strained relationship, is it calling for the virtue of understanding or the courage to have an honest conversation? If it's the health issue, is it an opportunity to practice patience and acceptance, or the discipline to follow a new regimen? By naming the virtue, you transform the obstacle from a threat into a purpose. You stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being a student of your own character, using every single thing that happens as raw material for a life of true mastery. The awareness of life's finitude is not morbid, it is a clarifying force. In a culture that often treats death as a distant, abstract concept or something to be hidden away, the Stoic practice of Memento Mori, literally remember you must die, stands as a powerful antidote to procrastination and triviality. This is not about cultivating a sense of dread or pessimism. Instead, it is about using the undeniable reality of our limited time as a lens to bring our lives into sharp, urgent focus. The comfort of someday, that vague future date when we will finally start that project, have that difficult conversation, or commit to that path of growth evaporates under the sobering light of this remembrance. Suddenly, the pursuits that truly matter, the ones that contribute to a life of mastery and virtue, demand our attention now, not in some imaginary future where conditions are perfect and we feel braver. Marcus Aurelius offered a beautifully balanced perspective on this. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He was not suggesting we live in a state of frantic anxiety, but in a state of profound presence and purpose. Another way to interpret this is to live each day as if it could be your last, but also as if it were your first, with the freshness, curiosity, and appreciation that such a beginning brings. This dual awareness is incredibly powerful. The last day mindset strips away all pretense and forces you to ask, am I spending this day on what is truly essential? Is this how I would want to be remembered? The first day mindset infuses that same day with a sense of possibility and gratitude, preventing the practice from becoming heavy or grim. It reminds you that today is a gift, an opportunity to begin again, to choose mastery over comfort with the energy of someone starting a great adventure. This philosophical concept becomes tangible through simple, daily reminders. The ancient Stoics and philosophers throughout history have kept physical mementos of mortality close at hand. The classic example is a replica of a human skull, a stark symbol of our shared fate. But your reminder doesn't need to be so dramatic. It could be a specific stone you keep on your desk that you picked up on a walk, reminding you of the enduring yet fleeting nature of things. It could be a piece of art, a quote framed on the wall, or even a recurring calendar notification with a simple, powerful phrase. The purpose of this object or note is not to depress you, but to periodically jerk you out of the autopilot of daily life. When you glance at it, it asks you a silent question. Is what I am doing right now worthy of the limited, precious time I have been given? This momentary pause can be enough to shift your trajectory from a path of least resistance toward a path of intentional action. Consider the transformative effect this can have on your decisions. Without the reminder of mortality, it is easy to defer important but difficult conversations, letting resentment fester in relationships because the discomfort of addressing it feels too great in the moment. But with Memento Mori in mind, the calculus changes. The potential short-term discomfort of an honest conversation is dwarfed by the long-term regret of a relationship left unresolved. Similarly, the effort required to learn a new skill or change careers feels immense when viewed through the lens of daily grind. But when viewed through the lens of a finite life, that same effort transforms into a meaningful investment, a necessary step toward becoming the person you wish to be before your time runs out. The practice reorders your priorities, placing the pursuit of character and mastery at the top of the list, and demoting the pursuit of mere comfort to its proper, much lower place. So let's make this deeply personal. I want you to engage in a thought experiment that has the power to instantly clarify what is important to you. Ask yourself this question with complete seriousness. If you knew with certainty that you had 1 year left to live, what comfort would you immediately abandon to pursue mastery? Be specific. Would you abandon the comfort of staying in a job that pays well but feels soul-crushing and offers no path for growth? Would you abandon the comfort of silence, finally speaking your truth in a relationship that matters to you? Would you abandon the comfort of endless entertainment, reclaiming those hours to write the book, build the business, or develop the skill you've always talked about? The answer to this question is a direct message from your deepest self about what you value most. It reveals the gap between the life you are currently living and the life of mastery you are capable of living. The purpose of Memento Mori is not to wait for a terminal diagnosis to start closing that gap, but to live with the clarity and courage that such knowledge brings, starting today. Mastery is impossible without the ability to focus deeply, a skill the Stoics valued highly. In our hyper-connected world, the greatest threat to this kind of concentrated effort is not a lack of time, but a constant state of divided attention. We have created an economy of distraction where every ping, notification, and alert offers a tiny hit of novelty, pulling us away from the sustained effort that genuine mastery demands. This is where an ancient Stoic discipline finds incredibly modern relevance, the discipline of assent. For the Stoics, this meant carefully guarding your initial impressions of events, not immediately accepting them as truth. In today's context, we can see this as the vital practice of guarding your attention itself. Every distraction is an impression, an external event vying for your mental energy. The undisciplined mind assents to it automatically, clicking the link, checking the phone, following the rabbit hole. The Stoic mind, however, pauses. It questions whether this impression is worthy of its focus. It recognizes that the easy comfort of distraction is often just a subtle form of avoidance, a way to escape the difficult but rewarding work of deep engagement. Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, wrote with striking clarity about the consequences of a scattered mind. He observed, "The mind that is untroubled and tranquil has a peaceful existence. The mind that is worn out by dwelling on its own anxieties is weakened by its exhaustion and loses its power to persevere." He goes on to describe how some people are constantly restless, leaping from one plan to another, never finding satisfaction because they never give any single endeavor their full, undivided attention. This is a perfect description of the modern multitasker, juggling tabs, messages, and tasks, yet feeling profoundly unaccomplished at the end of the day. Seneca argues that tranquility and power come from a unified focus, from directing all of one's resources toward a single point. The comfort of constant stimulation, he implies, is a trap that leads to a weak and dissipated life, while the disciplined focus required for deep work is the path to both inner peace and outer competence. Consider the stark contrast between two different ways of spending a 3-hour block of time. The first is a day most of us know all too well. You sit down to work on an important report or to practice a complex piece of music. Almost immediately, your phone buzzes with a social media notification. You check it and 5 minutes vanish. Then an email alert pops up. You quickly scan it and feel compelled to craft a rapid response. Another 10 minutes gone, a colleague stops by for a quick chat that stretches on. Your focus is shattered, and each time you return to the main task, it takes several minutes to reorient yourself, to find the flow you were in before the interruption. At the end of the 3 hours, you feel busy, even frazzled, but you have produced very little of real substance or quality. The path of comfort here was following every impulse, every distraction. It felt easier in the moment to respond to the external demands than to resist them and remain with the difficult internal work. Now picture the alternative. You schedule a 1-hour block for deep work. You turn off all notifications on your devices. You put your phone in another room, and you close every computer tab unrelated to your task. You inform those around you that you are not to be disturbed. For that 1 hour, you do nothing but engage with that single, challenging task. The first 10 minutes might be a struggle. Your mind will itch for distraction, craving the easy dopamine hits it's used to. But if you persevere, something remarkable happens. You enter a state of flow, your concentration deepens, ideas connect more fluidly, and your skill level intensifies. That single hour of undistracted, focused effort will likely produce higher quality output and more meaningful progress than the entire 3 hours of fragmented multitasking. This is the practical application of Stoic focus. It is the conscious, deliberate choice to protect your attention from the constant siege of impressions, to assent only to what serves your purpose of mastery. The challenge, then, is to move from understanding this principle to actively practicing it. The world is not going to become less distracting. The responsibility falls on us to build walls around our focus. This is not about isolation, but about intentionality. It is about recognizing that your attention is your most valuable resource, and that you must guard it with the same seriousness a Stoic would guard their character. So I want you to make a concrete commitment. Before this day is over, I challenge you to schedule just 1 hour of phone-free, notification-free, deep work focused exclusively on your most important skill. It could be writing, coding, studying, practicing an instrument, or analyzing data, whatever represents a genuine step toward mastery for you. Block it out in your calendar as you would an important meeting. Prepare your environment to minimize interruptions, and when the time comes, commit fully. When the urge to check your phone arises, acknowledge it as a mere impression and gently return your focus to the task at hand. This 1 hour is more than a productivity hack. It is a direct exercise in Stoic discipline. It is a declaration that you are the master of your attention and therefore the architect of your own mastery. Whose approval are you really working for? It is a question that strikes at the heart of our motivation. So much of our energy is spent crafting an image, seeking the validation of a boss, a peer, a social media following, or even society at large. We dress for the interview, we speak in meetings hoping to sound intelligent, we share our accomplishments waiting for the likes to pour in. This pursuit of external approval is one of the most seductive forms of comfort because it offers a tangible, if fleeting, reward. But this reliance on outside opinion creates a fragile foundation for a life. Your sense of worth becomes a yo-yo, jerked up and down by the unpredictable whims of other people. The Stoics identified this as a fundamental source of anxiety and a major obstacle to true mastery. The path of mastery, by its very nature, is often lonely, misunderstood, and initially unimpressive to outsiders. To walk it with conviction, you must build an unshakable source of validation that comes from within. This internal source of strength is what the Stoics called the inner citadel. It is a fortress of character that you build through consistent virtuous action. When your self-worth is derived from living in accordance with your own reasoned principles, from acting with courage, justice, wisdom, and moderation, the praises and criticisms of the outside world begin to lose their power to destabilize you. They become like weather outside the walls of your fortress. You notice the sun of praise and you appreciate its warmth, but you do not depend on it for survival. You notice the storm of criticism and you take shelter, but you are not destroyed by it. Your core identity remains secure because it is based on something you control completely: your own choices and intentions. This is not about becoming arrogant or dismissive of feedback. It is about developing the discernment to evaluate feedback against your own internal standards, rather than letting it define you. The Stoic teacher Epictetus, who began his life as a slave, understood the futility of chasing external validation better than most. He offered a brilliantly simple test for any praise or blame that comes your way. He said, "If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, 'He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone.'" This is more than just a witty retort. It is a profound psychological strategy. It immediately reframes criticism from a personal attack into a statement about the criticizer's limited perspective. It deflates the emotional charge and allows you to consider the feedback with calm detachment. Is there truth in it that can help me improve? If so, accept it gratefully. If not, let it pass by like background noise. The goal is to reach a state where you are no more disturbed by flattery than you are by insults, because your sense of self is rooted in something far more solid and reliable. Consider the example of a true artist, one who is dedicated to their craft not for fame or fortune, but for the sake of the work itself. Imagine a painter who develops a unique, unconventional style. The art establishment, used to traditional forms, dismisses her work as amateurish or confusing. Galleries reject her. Critics write scathing reviews. The easy, comfortable path would be to change her style, to paint what sells, to seek the approval she is being denied. But if her motivation is mastery, if her inner citadel is strong, she will process this criticism differently. She will assess it with reason. She might ask, does this feedback point to a technical weakness I can work on, or does it simply reflect a difference in taste? If it is the latter, she will remain steadfast. Her validation comes from the integrity of her creative process, from the challenge of translating her vision onto the canvas, and from her own judgment that she is being true to her art. Her commitment is to the mastery of her expression, not to the applause. History is filled with such artists who are only celebrated long after they stayed true to their path despite widespread criticism. This principle applies with equal force in the professional world. Think of a manager who is faced with a decision that is ethically right, but will be unpopular with the team or with upper management. Perhaps it involves terminating a well-liked but consistently underperforming employee for the health of the project. The comfortable choice, driven by a desire for approval, would be to avoid the conflict, to let the situation fester. The path of mastery, however, demands the courage to make the difficult decision. The manager grounded in Stoic principles acts based on what is just and beneficial for the whole, not on a craving to be seen as the nice guy. They understand that their worth as a leader is not determined by their popularity in any given moment, but by their consistent commitment to doing what is right, even when it is hard. They are working for the approval of their own conscience, which is the only approval that ultimately matters and cannot be taken away. So, let's turn this powerful lens onto your own life. Bring to mind a recent situation where you found yourself strongly seeking someone's approval. It might have been in a meeting where you offered an idea and were anxiously watching faces for signs of agreement. It could have been when you posted a photo online and found yourself checking for likes more often than you'd like to admit. Or perhaps it was a conversation with a family member where you held back your true opinion to keep the peace. Now replay that moment and ask yourself a few probing questions. How did the desire for approval influence my actions? Did it cause me to exaggerate, to stay silent when I should have spoken, or to agree with something I didn't truly believe? What would I have done differently if I were completely indifferent to that person's opinion, guided solely by my own principles of honesty and integrity? This reflection is not about cultivating callousness towards others. It is about reclaiming your agency. It is about ensuring that your choices are driven by your own inner compass, freeing you to pursue the difficult and meaningful work of mastery, regardless of who is watching or what they might say. For the Stoics, a successful life isn't about comfort. It's about flourishing through excellence of character. This ultimate aim is captured in the beautiful Greek word Eudaimonia, which is often translated as flourishing or a life well lived. While our modern culture often equates success with wealth, status, or the accumulation of pleasurable experiences, Eudaimonia points to something far deeper and more durable. It is not a temporary emotional high that fades when circumstances change, but a profound sense of fulfillment that arises from within, from knowing you are living in alignment with your highest nature. The Stoics, heavily influenced by earlier philosophers like Aristotle, saw this flourishing as the natural consequence of a life dedicated to virtue. It is the quiet, unwavering satisfaction that comes when your actions are consistently guided by courage, justice, wisdom, and self-discipline, regardless of the external outcomes. This is the true North Star that makes all the sacrifices for mastery worthwhile, because the goal is not a comfortable destination, but a certain quality of journey, a journey of continuous growth and integrity. Contrast this with the fleeting happiness we often chase. The pleasure of a comfortable sofa, a delicious meal, or an entertaining video is real, but it is also transient. It depends entirely on external conditions and vanishes the moment those conditions change, often leaving a subtle sense of emptiness in its wake. This is a happiness that is done to you. Eudaimonia, on the other hand, is a state of being that you actively cultivate through your choices. It is the difference between the hollow feeling you might have after spending an entire day passively consuming entertainment, a day that slips through your fingers leaving no trace, and the deep, solid feeling of accomplishment after a day spent grappling with a difficult problem, helping someone in need, or making tangible progress on a skill. One is a distraction from life, the other is an engagement with life at its fullest. The pursuit of comfort offers a pleasant numbness, but the pursuit of eudaimonia offers a vibrant, authentic vitality that is immune to the ups and downs of fortune. This idea that virtue is its own reward was a central tenet of Stoic thought. They argued that the only true good is a virtuous character, and the only true evil is vice. Everything else, health, wealth, reputation, is considered preferred or dispreferred, but ultimately indifferent to your ability to flourish. A quote often attributed to the Stoics encapsulates this: virtue is its own reward. This doesn't mean that external things are worthless. It means they are not essential to your core well-being. A Stoic sage, in theory, could achieve eudaimonia even in the most dire circumstances, because their flourishing is based on their excellent use of reason and their virtuous intentions, which can never be taken from them. This is the ultimate liberation. It means your happiness and sense of a life well lived are no longer hostage to luck. Your flourishing is built on the solid ground of your own character, a project that is entirely within your control. To make this concrete, imagine two different evenings. In the first, you come home from work exhausted and spend the next 4 hours scrolling through social media and watching television. The experience is easy, it requires no effort, and it passes the time. But when you finally go to bed, there's a vague sense of dissatisfaction, a feeling that the evening was lost. Now imagine an alternative. You come home equally tired, but you choose to spend 1 hour working on a wooden bookshelf you are building by hand. It's frustrating. You measure a cut wrong and have to start over. Your fingers are sore, and it would be far easier to quit. But you persist. When you finally put the tools down, you look at your progress. The joints are fitting, the shape is taking form. You feel a deep, quiet sense of satisfaction that has nothing to do with anyone else's opinion. That feeling is a small taste of eudaimonia. It is the satisfaction of having exerted your will, of having created something, of having overcome a difficulty through your own effort. It is a happiness that you have earned, and it lingers long after the moment has passed. This understanding invites you to become the author of your own definition of success. So many of us chase goals that society has handed to us without ever questioning if they truly lead to a flourishing life. The Stoic path asks you to pause and define what eudaimonia means for you personally. It's not about rejecting material success, but about ensuring it serves your deeper purpose rather than becoming the purpose itself. To truly integrate this, take a moment to engage in a clarifying exercise. Get a piece of paper or open a note on your phone and write down your own personal definition of a flourishing life. Go beyond the surface-level desires for a big house or a fancy car. Ask yourself, what qualities of character would I embody in my ideal life? How would I interact with others? What kind of work would feel meaningful? What would a typical day look like if it were filled with purpose and alignment? This act of writing forces clarity. It moves the goal from a vague feeling to a concrete set of principles that can guide your daily choices, turning the abstract ideal of eudaimonia into a practical compass for designing a life of true and lasting mastery. Think of this next practice as a mental vaccine against the fear of discomfort. Just as a vaccine introduces a weakened version of a virus to train your immune system, the Stoic discipline of negative visualization, or premeditatio malorum, introduces a controlled dose of adversity to your mind. This is the proactive work of regularly and calmly imagining the loss of the things you take for granted or the occurrence of challenges you hope to avoid. It is not an exercise in pessimism or anxiety. It is a training in preparedness and gratitude. By voluntarily visiting these potential difficulties in your imagination, you desensitize yourself to their emotional impact. When you have already faced a version of a crisis in your mind and rehearsed a virtuous response, the real event, should it ever occur, loses its power to shock and paralyze you. You meet it not as a catastrophe, but as a situation you have already thoughtfully considered. Seneca, one of the wealthiest men in Rome, was a master of this practice. He understood that his fortune and status were gifts of fate, not permanent possessions. To prevent himself from becoming attached to them in a way that would cause terror if they were lost, he would periodically engage in a profound mental exercise. He would set aside time to vividly imagine that he had lost his money, his reputation, his social standing, even his health. He would walk himself through the scenario not with panic but with a calm curiosity. He would ask himself, if this were taken from me, what would I do? How would I live? What would truly matter? In his letters, he explains this by writing, "He who has learned to die has unlearned how to be a slave." In this context, he means that by accepting the potential loss of all externals, you free yourself from being enslaved by the fear of losing them. This practice ensured that Seneca enjoyed his comforts without being controlled by them. His peace of mind was rooted in his character, not his bank account. Let's translate this ancient technique into a simple, modern exercise you can do right now. Find a quiet moment, close your eyes if you feel comfortable, and bring to mind a comfort you rely on heavily. For many of us, it might be our smartphone, a device that provides constant connection, information, and entertainment. Now vividly imagine that it is gone, not just for an hour, but permanently. The screen is shattered beyond repair, all your data is lost, and you cannot replace it. Sit with that feeling for a moment. Notice the initial pang of anxiety, the sense of being cut off, the frustration. Now push the visualization further. How would you adapt? How would you find your way without a digital map? How would you communicate with loved ones? How would you occupy the empty spaces in your day that are usually filled with scrolling? You would find a way. You would write letters, ask for directions, read a physical book, or simply sit with your own thoughts. This exercise isn't about predicting the future. It's about proving to yourself in a safe space that you are more resilient than your attachments. It reveals that your capacity for resourcefulness and peace does not reside in a piece of technology, but within you. The power of this practice is twofold. First, it builds emotional resilience by reducing the shock of potential misfortune. A person who has never considered job loss will be utterly devastated by a layoff. But a person who has periodically visualized that scenario, who has mentally walked through updating their resume, cutting discretionary spending, and viewing the event as an opportunity for a new beginning, will experience it as a serious challenge, but not a catastrophe. They have a pre-planned psychological and practical framework to lean on. Second, and perhaps more immediately beneficial, negative visualization is a powerful engine for gratitude. By consciously imagining the absence of something, you instantly restore your appreciation for its presence. After imagining life without your phone, when you open your eyes and see it on the table, you don't see it as a source of stress or distraction, but as a useful tool that you are fortunate to have. The meal you are about to eat becomes a feast when you have just contemplated going hungry. The health you enjoy feels like a blessing when you have honestly considered the alternative. This is why the Stoics saw this not as a morbid practice, but as a vital one for living a joyful and robust life. It inoculates you against the fear that drives so much comfort-seeking behavior, and it simultaneously heightens your capacity to savor the present moment. To make this a living part of your philosophy, I invite you to a very concrete practice. Sometime in the next 24 hours, set aside just 2 minutes. Choose one comfort you deeply rely on. It could be your morning coffee, your car, your comfortable home, or even a specific relationship. For those 2 minutes, do nothing but vividly imagine life without it. Don't rush, explore the details of the loss, and most importantly, envision yourself navigating that new reality with calmness and resourcefulness. This brief mental vacation from your comforts will do more than just prepare you for hardship. It will return you to your present life with sharpened senses and a renewed appreciation for the abundance you already possess. Does your work allow you to practice courage, justice, and wisdom? This might seem like a strange question to ask about a career, but for a Stoic, it is the most important metric of all. We spend a significant portion of our lives working, and if that time is spent in a role that contradicts our deepest values, it creates a quiet but persistent friction that erodes our spirit. Stoicism shifts the focus of work from what we get, the paycheck, the title, the comfort, to what we give and who we become in the process. A job chosen solely for its ease or its external rewards might offer a comfortable existence, but it often leads to a profound sense of emptiness because it neglects the core human needs for purpose, contribution, and the expression of virtue. Meaningful work, on the other hand, even when it is more challenging and less lucrative, becomes a daily training ground for mastery, not just of a skill, but of your own character. Marcus Aurelius, despite the immense burden of leading an empire, constantly reminded himself of the integrity required in every single action. In his Meditations, he writes, "When you have trouble getting out of bed in the morning, remember that your defining characteristic, what defines a human being, is to work with others." Even animals know how to sleep, and it's the characteristic activity that we're made for, to work together and to work for the common good. He then adds the crucial Stoic lens, so to do what you were made to do, or to be pampered. Doesn't the plant, the sparrow, the ant, the spider do their own work, weaving their web and making their nest, and in this way helping to maintain the cosmic order? And then you don't want to do what a human being does. You don't run to what your own nature demands. For Marcus, work was not a separate part of life. It was an integral expression of our nature as rational, social beings meant to contribute. He advised doing every act, especially your work, as if it were your very last, but to do it with impeccable integrity and focus. This mindset transforms even the most mundane task into an opportunity for virtue. Consider the stark contrast between two potential career paths. The first is a high-paying corporate law position. The salary is exceptional, the office is luxurious, and the title commands respect. On the surface, it represents the pinnacle of success, but the daily reality involves defending clients or corporate policies that you privately find unjust, or spending your days on tedious, soul-numbing paperwork that feels devoid of any real contribution to society. The work demands long hours, but it doesn't demand your soul. In fact, it asks you to check your values at the door. This is a job chosen for comfort and external validation. Now picture the alternative, a career as a public defender. The pay is modest, the hours are just as long, and the working conditions are often stressful and under-resourced. The cases are difficult, and you face defeat regularly. Yet every single day you are actively practicing the Stoic virtues. You practice courage by standing up for the underrepresented in a daunting legal system. You practice justice by fighting to ensure every person receives a fair defense. You practice wisdom by navigating complex laws and human stories, and you practice temperance by managing a heavy caseload without burning out. This path is undeniably harder in terms of comfort, but it is infinitely richer in meaning and offers a clear path to mastery, not just of law but of character. This is not to say that everyone must work in a non-profit or a helping profession to find meaning. The Stoic principle applies to any field. A software engineer can find purpose in creating technology that genuinely improves people's lives, practicing wisdom in her code and justice in her data ethics. A carpenter can find mastery in the integrity of his craft, taking pride in building something that will last and serve a family well. A business owner can create a company that treats its employees with fairness and contributes positively to its community. The key differentiator is not the job title, but the alignment between the work and your core values. Does your work feel like an expression of who you are and what you believe in? Or does it feel like a performance you put on for a paycheck, a costume you wear that you're relieved to take off at the end of the day? This alignment is what separates a mere job from a vocation. A job is a transaction. You trade your time for money. A vocation is a calling. It is work that calls upon your unique strengths and allows you to answer a need in the world. The Stoic path encourages us to move wherever possible toward vocation. This might not mean an immediate, dramatic career change. It might begin with a subtle shift in how you approach your current role. Can you find a way to inject more integrity into your interactions? Can you focus on mastering one aspect of your work that you can take genuine pride in? Can you see your role as a service to your colleagues or customers? Sometimes meaning is not found in changing the what, but in transforming the why and the how. So let's bring this critical reflection directly into your life. I want you to take an honest assessment of your current work. Grab a piece of paper and draw a line down the center. On one side, list the ways your work does allow you to practice virtue. Does it require you to be courageous? Does it ask you to be fair and just? Does it challenge you to develop wisdom and skill? On the other side, list the ways it might conflict with your values. Does it ask you to compromise your honesty? Does it feel pointless or even harmful? Does it stifle your growth? This is not an exercise designed to make you quit your job tomorrow, but to bring conscious awareness to the trade-offs you are making. Based on this assessment, ask yourself the most important question. Does my current work offer a genuine path for mastery of my craft and my character? If the answer is no, what is one small step I could take to move closer to work that does? That step might be updating your resume, taking a night class in a field that ignites your passion, or simply starting a conversation with someone who has a career you admire. The goal is to ensure that your work becomes a pillar of your flourishing life, not an obstacle to it. Imagine your journal as a conversation with your wiser self. It is a private space where you can step back from the noise of daily life and consult the part of you that understands your long-term goals and deepest values. In the relentless pursuit of mastery, it is dangerously easy to get lost in the momentum of action, moving from one task to the next without ever pausing to ask if you are moving in the right direction. Journaling is the Stoic practice that forces this essential pause. It is the tool that transforms experience into wisdom, turning the chaotic events of your day into deliberate lessons for your character. When you put pen to paper, something powerful happens. Vague anxieties and rationalizations which can swirl unchallenged in your mind are brought into the light of reason. The excuse you made for skipping your workout, the justification for that unnecessary purchase, the subtle avoidance of a difficult conversation, all of these comfort-seeking behaviors lose their power when you are forced to write them down and examine them honestly. We have a living, breathing example of this practice in one of the most influential books of all time, Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. It is crucial to remember that this was never intended for publication. It was a private journal, a series of notes and reminders that the most powerful man in the ancient world wrote to himself. He was not trying to impress an audience or create a philosophical masterpiece. He was engaged in the raw, unpolished work of self-examination, wrestling with his own weaknesses, reinforcing his principles, and preparing himself to face the immense challenges of his day with virtue. The very existence of meditations demonstrates that journaling is not a sign of weakness or self-absorption. It is the discipline of a leader, a practice of taking command of your own mind. It is how you design your inner world, which, as the Stoics teach, is the only world you can truly control. The practical application of this is beautifully simple and requires no special equipment or elaborate system. The power is in the consistency of the questions you ask yourself. At the end of each day, you might open your notebook and write just a few lines in response to prompts that guide your reflection toward growth. For instance, you could ask, "Where did I choose comfort over growth today?" This question shines a light directly on the moments where you took the easy way out. Perhaps you procrastinated on a challenging project by cleaning your desk instead, trading the discomfort of deep work for the comfortable illusion of productivity. Or you might ask, "What virtue did I practice well?" This focuses your attention on your successes, no matter how small. Maybe you demonstrated patience with a frustrated customer, or you found the courage to voice an unpopular but necessary opinion in a meeting. The act of writing it down reinforces that positive behavior, wiring it more deeply into your character. Another powerful prompt is to review your actions against the Stoic virtues of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. You could write, "In what situation today did I act with wisdom? Or did I avoid an action that would have been unjust?" This turns abstract ideals into a daily report card on your own progress. The goal is not to berate yourself for shortcomings, but to see them clearly, learn from them, and resolve to do better tomorrow. This is the evening review that Seneca practiced, brought to life in your own words. It closes the loop on your day, ensuring that no experience, whether a success or a stumble, is wasted. Every event becomes grist for the mill of your self-improvement. The barrier to starting is often the belief that it needs to be a long, time-consuming process. This is a misconception that keeps many people from ever beginning. The Stoic commitment to action over theory tells us that the perfect journal is the one you actually use. So, let's make the entry point impossibly small. The invitation is not to write pages of profound prose, but to start a conversation with yourself tonight. Before you go to sleep, take just 60 seconds. Open a notebook or a note on your phone and write a single sentence that reflects on your day from a Stoic perspective. It could be as simple as, "Today, I am proud that I persevered through a difficult task," or "I noticed that I sought comfort in distraction when I felt stressed, and tomorrow I will try a 5-minute walk instead." This one sentence is a seed. It is the first deliberate step in building the habit of self-examination. It is your way of saying that your life is worth reflecting on, and that your path toward mastery is a journey you intend to navigate with conscious awareness, one day at a time. My formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati, the love of one's fate. This powerful idea, articulated by Friedrich Nietzsche but deeply rooted in Stoic philosophy, takes the principle of accepting obstacles to its ultimate, most transformative conclusion. It's not merely about tolerating what happens or resigning yourself to it with a sigh. Amor Fati is about embracing your entire life, every triumph, every setback, every seemingly random event, with a profound, active love. It is the radical decision to see everything that occurs as not just something to be endured, but as an essential, indispensable ingredient in the person you are becoming. This mindset completely transmutes the energy of resentment and regret into the fuel of gratitude and growth, treating every experience, without exception, as the raw material for building a character of unshakable strength and depth. The Stoic version of this is found in the writings of Marcus Aurelius, who constantly reminded himself to welcome the events the universe presented. He wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." In another passage, he advises himself to accept everything that happens as if he had actually wished for it himself, stating, "Whatever happens to you has been waiting to happen since the beginning of time." The twining strands of fate wove both of them together, your own existence and the things that happen to you. This is the core of Amor Fati. It is the recognition that your life is a single, unified story, and that to reject any part of it, to curse a chapter as a mistake or an injustice, is to tear a page from the book of your own becoming. The goal is to cheerfully assent to the entire narrative, trusting that even the most difficult passages are necessary for the plot's ultimate coherence and meaning. Consider a scenario that feels all too familiar in the professional world. You work tirelessly for a promotion, putting in extra hours, delivering exceptional results, and you feel you've earned it. Then the decision comes down and the role is given to a colleague. The immediate reaction is one of crushing disappointment, perhaps even anger and a sense of injustice. The comfortable, familiar path is to dwell in that resentment, to tell yourself a story about being overlooked and undervalued. This narrative saps your energy and traps you in the past. But the path of Amor Fati invites a completely different interpretation. What if this failure was not a door slamming shut, but a necessary redirection? Perhaps staying in that role would have locked you into a career path that, while prestigious, was misaligned with your deeper talents. The disappointment itself forces a period of reflection that leads you to re-evaluate your skills and passions. This could be the catalyst that pushes you to start your own business, to shift into a different industry where your unique abilities truly shine, or to develop a resilience you never knew you needed. The missed promotion, when loved as part of your fate, becomes the very event that steered you toward a more authentic and fulfilling form of mastery. This practice is an active, creative endeavor. It requires you to become the author of your life's meaning, not just a passive reader of its events. When you practice Amor Fati, you are not denying the pain or difficulty of a situation. You are simply choosing to focus on its potential value. A serious illness is a terrible trial, but it can also be the event that teaches you the depth of your own courage, the preciousness of each day, and the strength of your relationships. A financial loss is frightening, but it can force a simplicity and resourcefulness that leads to a more purposeful and less cluttered life. The practice is to look at the event and ask not, "Why did this happen to me?" but "How can this event serve me? What quality can it help me cultivate? How is it perfect for my growth?" This reframing does not change the external event, but it completely transforms your internal reality, turning you from a victim of circumstance into an alchemist of experience. To truly integrate this profound concept, let's bring it into the laboratory of your own life. I want you to recall a past disappointment, a failure, or a rejection that still carries a bit of a sting. It doesn't have to be a monumental event. Even a smaller setback will work perfectly. Now, instead of simply reliving the disappointment, I want you to engage in a deliberate act of finding the gold within it. Ask yourself these questions. What did this experience force me to learn about myself that I might otherwise have never discovered? Did it reveal a hidden strength or a necessary weakness I needed to address? How did it change my direction, even in a small way? And did that change lead to an opportunity I would have otherwise missed? The goal is to find just one positive outcome, one valuable lesson, or one way in which you became stronger as a direct result of that event. This is not about pretending it was a good thing, but about acknowledging that within the difficulty, a seed of growth was planted. By doing this, you are not erasing the past, you are redeeming it. You are taking the raw material of your history and with the fire of Amor Fati, forging it into a tool for your future mastery. The Stoics knew that neglecting the body weakens the mind's resolve. This principle, often summarized by the ancient maxim "a sound mind in a sound body," was not just a platitude for them, it was a foundational element of their philosophical practice. They understood that our physical vessel is not separate from our willpower or our character. It is the primary instrument through which we enact our virtues, and if that instrument is soft, untrained, and accustomed only to comfort, then the mind that inhabits it will inevitably become soft as well. The discipline required to move the body against its immediate desires for rest and ease is the very same discipline needed to direct the mind away from distraction and toward focused effort. In this way, physical training becomes a daily, tangible rehearsal for the more abstract challenges of life. The Stoic teacher Musonius Rufus spoke directly to this connection, arguing that physical training was not a distraction from philosophy but an essential part of it. He taught that just as a craftsman must maintain his tools to do good work, a philosopher must maintain his body to effectively practice virtue. He believed that enduring physical hardship through exercise, manual labor, or embracing the elements was a direct way to cultivate endurance, resilience, and self-control. For Rufus, the goal wasn't to become a champion athlete, but to forge a body that was a capable and obedient servant to a rational mind. A body that is strong, healthy, and accustomed to discomfort does not constantly signal the mind with complaints and cravings for ease. It becomes a stable platform from which the mind can operate with clarity and purpose, rather than being preoccupied with managing a source of weakness. We can see this dynamic play out in a choice that millions of people face every single day: the decision to exercise. The alarm clock rings early on a cold morning. The warm bed offers immediate, powerful comfort. The thought of getting up to go for a run or to lift weights presents a clear, immediate discomfort. The path of least resistance is to hit the snooze button, to rationalize that you need the rest that you can work out later, a promise that often goes unfulfilled. This is not just a battle between sleep and exercise. It is a microcosm of the larger struggle between comfort and mastery. Every time you choose to get up, you are not merely doing a set of squats or running a mile. You are actively strengthening the neural pathway in your brain associated with choosing the difficult but beneficial action over the easy and seductive one. You are building a mental muscle. The benefits of this choice extend far beyond the gym or the running path. The discipline cultivated during a morning workout pays dividends throughout the entire day. When you have already overcome a significant internal resistance first thing in the morning, the smaller resistances you face later seem far less daunting. The difficult email you need to write, the tedious task you've been putting off, the uncomfortable conversation you need to have, these challenges lose their power to paralyze you because you have already proven to yourself that you are someone who can do hard things. The feeling of accomplishment and vitality that follows physical exertion also creates a positive feedback loop. You carry yourself with more confidence, your mind is clearer, and you are less susceptible to the petty irritations that can derail an undisciplined day. The physical discipline becomes a keystone habit that supports and reinforces all other disciplines in your life. Therefore, the challenge is to move this from an intellectual understanding to a lived experience. This week, I want you to make a specific, non-negotiable commitment to one form of physical discipline. It doesn't have to be an extreme 2-hour gym session. In fact, it's better to start small and be consistent. The commitment could be to a 15-minute brisk walk every day, to 10 minutes of bodyweight exercises each morning, or to taking the stairs instead of the elevator whenever possible. The key is to choose an activity that requires a conscious decision to move past a point of comfort. As you do it, shift your focus from the physical outcome, like losing weight or building muscle, to the mental strength you are building. With each step, each repetition, remind yourself that you are not just training your body, you are training your will. You are proving to yourself, in the most concrete way possible, that you are the master of your impulses and that you are actively designing a life of strength, both inside and out. A master craftsman doesn't rush. They understand the value of each deliberate step. They know that forcing the wood or hurrying the finish will only weaken the final product. True artistry requires a deep respect for the process itself, a willingness to move at the pace that the work demands, not the pace of our impatience. This same principle applies to the art of living a life of mastery. In a world conditioned for instant gratification, where we can get answers, meals, and entertainment in seconds, our psychological muscles for patience have begun to atrophy. We are tempted to judge every effort by its immediate, visible payoff, abandoning paths that don't offer a quick reward. But the Stoics remind us that anything of genuine worth, be it a sturdy piece of furniture, a fluent command of a language, or a virtuous character, cannot be rushed. It is the natural result of countless small, consistent actions taken over a long arc of time. This is where the Stoic virtue of patience reveals its strategic nature. It is not a passive waiting, but an active, intelligent endurance. It is the conscious choice to invest your energy in activities whose fruits may not be visible for months or even years, trusting in the compound interest of daily effort. Seneca, in his essay on the shortness of life, touches on this when he laments how people waste their time chasing fleeting pleasures instead of investing it in pursuits that yield lasting value. He writes, "It takes the whole of life to learn how to live, and what will perhaps make you wonder more, it takes the whole of life to learn how to die." While this speaks to life's ultimate lesson, it underscores a broader point. Great things demand great stretches of time. There are no shortcuts to wisdom or expertise. The comfort-seeking mind wants a hack, a secret formula that bypasses the struggle. The mastery-oriented mind, guided by Stoic patience, accepts the struggle as the very substance of the journey. Consider the process of learning to play a musical instrument. On the first day, the sounds you produce are likely harsh and unmusical. Your fingers feel clumsy, the theory seems abstract, and the gap between your ability and the music you love feels impossibly wide. The impatient response is to give up, to decide you just aren't musical, and to seek a more immediately satisfying hobby. But the person committed to mastery approaches it differently. They do not focus on the distant dream of performing a complex concerto. Instead, they fall in love with the 5 minutes of daily scales. They find satisfaction in the slight improvement in their finger placement from one week to the next. They measure progress not by the outcome, but by their fidelity to the process. Each day's practice is a small, patient deposit into a long-term investment account of skill. After a year, the cumulative effect is dramatic. After 5 years, it is transformative. The oak tree, as the analogy goes, grows from a tiny acorn through decades of steady, unseen growth underground before it becomes a mighty shelter. This long-term perspective is a direct application of the Stoic Dichotomy of Control. The final outcome, whether you become a renowned musician or simply a competent player who finds joy in the craft, is not entirely within your power. It depends on factors like opportunity, innate talent, and the whims of public taste. But the process, the daily decision to practice, to listen carefully, to correct your mistakes, that is entirely within your sphere of command. By focusing on the process, you align your efforts with what you can control, which is the only path to true tranquility and consistent progress. The desire for a quick win is a desire to control an external outcome rapidly. The commitment to patient practice is a commitment to mastering your own actions day after day. This shift in focus from the distant horizon to the next immediate step is what makes a long-term goal not only achievable but enjoyable along the way. To bring this principle into your own life, take a moment to identify one long-term aspiration that feels significant to you. It might be achieving fluency in a new language, building a successful business from the ground up, writing a novel, or cultivating a deep and lasting sense of inner peace. Now, instead of feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of that goal, I want you to practice strategic patience by breaking it down into the smallest, most patient step imaginable. What is the very first thing you would need to do? Not the entire plan, just the initial action. If your goal is to learn a language, the first step is not become fluent. It is research and choose one language learning app or find a beginner's textbook. If your goal is to write a novel, the first step is not write 300 pages. It is set a timer for 10 minutes and write one paragraph about a character. The power of this approach is that it makes the journey immediate and accessible. You are not waiting for the future to begin. You are starting it now with a step so small that it requires no heroic willpower, only a modest amount of patience and consistency. Write down that one small step, then tomorrow take it. This is how a marathon is run, not by fixating on the finish line miles away, but by focusing on the very next step, and then the one after that, trusting that each patient, deliberate movement is carrying you forward. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. When Seneca wrote those words, he was pointing to a truth that runs far deeper than material wealth. He was diagnosing a state of mind, an internal restlessness that confuses the accumulation of possessions with the achievement of peace. In our modern world, this craving has been amplified into a constant, low-grade hum of desire. We are surrounded by an endless stream of new things to buy, new content to consume, new notifications demanding our attention. This clutter, however, is not limited to our physical spaces. It invades our digital lives with countless apps and subscriptions, and it even colonizes our mental landscape with a ceaseless to-do list and a nagging sense of obligation. All of this noise creates a form of friction that constantly pulls at our focus, draining the very energy and attention we need to devote to the deep, focused work of mastery. Stoic-inspired simplification, then, is not about adopting an aesthetic of empty rooms or denying yourself pleasure. It is a strategic, active choice to clear away the superfluous so that you have the space, the clarity, and the resources to pursue what is truly essential. The Stoic philosophers themselves were living examples of this principle, despite their vastly different circumstances. Consider Epictetus, who was born a slave. He owned virtually nothing, and yet he cultivated a freedom of mind that made him one of the most influential teachers of his age. His philosophy was built on the idea that our shackles are often of our own making, forged from our attachments to external things. Then there was Cato the Younger, a powerful senator who, despite his wealth and status, chose to live with remarkable simplicity. He wore simple clothing, ate plain food, and often traveled on foot. For Cato, this was not a performance of humility, but a practical discipline. By minimizing his needs and desires for luxury, he made himself less dependent on fortune and less vulnerable to corruption. He was ensuring that his judgment remained clear and his character strong, unswayed by the temptations and distractions that corrupted his peers. Their lives demonstrate that simplification is about creating internal sovereignty. It is about reducing the number of things that can command your attention and dictate your emotional state so that your will remains your own. this philosophy translates directly into a powerful modern practice, the Stoic Purge. This is a deliberate, periodic audit of your life with the specific intention of removing what does not serve your higher purpose. The goal is to systematically identify and eliminate the clutter that drains your energy, so you can redirect that energy toward your path of mastery. This purge can happen in three key areas. First, the physical realm. Look around your living or working space. How many of your possessions are truly used and valued? How many are simply there, taking up space and creating visual noise that subconsciously weighs on your mind? A Stoic purge of a closet, for example, isn't just about creating order. It is an exercise in examining your attachment to each item. Does this thing serve a practical purpose or bring genuine joy? Or is it kept out of guilt, a faded memory of a past self, or a vague sense of someday? Letting it go is an act of freeing up mental real estate, a declaration that you are focused on the present and the future you are actively building. The second frontier for this purge is the digital world, which is often an even greater source of distraction. Our devices are portals to infinite information and entertainment, but this abundance comes at a cost. Every app on your phone, every email subscription in your inbox, every social media account you follow is a potential claimant on your attention. A digital Stoic purge involves a ruthless assessment. Which apps do you use for genuine connection or purposeful learning, and which are merely slots for your focus, designed to keep you scrolling mindlessly? Unsubscribing from promotional emails that you never read is a small but symbolic act of reclaiming your time. Unfollowing accounts that trigger comparison or envy is a way to curate a digital environment that supports your peace of mind and your goals rather than undermining them. Each digital item you remove is like closing a door to a noisy room, allowing you to concentrate in the quiet space you have created for yourself. Finally, and most importantly, is the purge of mental and social clutter. These are the commitments, habits, and even relationships that drain your energy without contributing to your growth. Do you have obligations on your calendar that you dread, accepted out of a sense of guilt rather than genuine desire? Are there time-wasting habits, like falling into a rabbit hole of online debates or watching television out of boredom rather than intention, that consume hours of your week? Simplification asks you to examine these patterns with the same rigor you would apply to a cluttered garage. It means learning to say no to requests that do not align with your core priorities. It means replacing passive consumption with active engagement. This is perhaps the most challenging form of purification because it requires honesty and courage, but it is also the most rewarding. By clearing away the mental clutter of unnecessary obligations, you create the psychological space needed for deep work, creative thinking, and the focused pursuit of mastery. So, the practical step for you is to make this philosophy active. Look at your life through the lens of a Stoic architect, tasked with designing an environment conducive to focus and growth. Identify one specific possession, one digital subscription, or one time-wasting commitment that you can let go of this week. It doesn't have to be a massive, life-altering decision. Start with something manageable. Perhaps it is a drawer full of tangled cables you never use, a streaming service you signed up for but rarely watch, or a weekly meeting you attend that has long since lost its purpose. The act of consciously removing it is more than just an organizational task. It is a statement of intent. It is a vote for a life of purpose over a life of accumulation. Each item you release, each distraction you eliminate, creates a little more room for what truly matters: the quiet, sustained effort that leads to genuine mastery. Building mindfulness checkpoints into your day transforms Stoic philosophy from a theoretical ideal into a living, breathing practice. It is the art of creating intentional moments of pause amidst the rush of daily life, where you can step back from the automatic pull of your impulses and ask a simple but profound question. Does this thought, this word, this action serve my goal of mastering my life, or is it merely a reaction seeking comfort? This is not about adding another burdensome task to your to-do list. It is about inserting brief islands of conscious awareness into the river of your day, allowing you to navigate its currents with purpose rather than being swept along by them. It is the difference between being a passenger on a runaway train of habit and being the engineer, calmly checking the gauges and adjusting the course. The ancient Stoics understood that our biggest missteps rarely come from a lack of knowledge, but from a failure to apply that knowledge in the heat of the moment. We know we should be patient, but then someone cuts us off in traffic and a stream of anger erupts before we can even think. We know we should be focused, but the ping of a notification instantly derails our concentration. The gap between the external event and our internal reaction is often infinitesimally small, but within that tiny space lies all of our freedom. Epictetus gave us the key to widening that gap when he advised, "Pause and say to yourself before you act on any impression." This pause is the fundamental Stoic maneuver. It is the conscious insertion of a moment of choice between the trigger and the response, creating the room for reason to intervene before emotion takes the wheel. Consider a scenario that tests nearly everyone, receiving critical feedback, especially when it feels unfair or poorly delivered. The immediate, comfort-seeking impulse is often defensiveness. Your heart rate quickens, your ego flares up, and you feel a powerful urge to justify yourself, to explain away the criticism or to counterattack. This is the reactive path. It feels powerful in the moment because it protects your self-image, but it is ultimately a path of weakness because it shuts down learning and often damages relationships. Now imagine applying the Stoic pause. The critical email arrives or the comment is made in a meeting. Instead of launching into a defense, you take one deep breath. You create that checkpoint. In that brief moment of silence, you invoke your Stoic principles. You ask yourself, is a defensive reaction virtuous? Does it serve my goal of mastery, or is it just protecting my comfort? The answer, guided by reason, becomes clear. The mastery-oriented response is to listen, to seek understanding, to sift the feedback for any valuable grain of truth, and to respond with gratitude for the opportunity to improve. This reflective response requires courage and humility, but it turns a potential conflict into a stepping stone for growth. This practice of in-the-moment reflection is what turns everyday irritations into a gym for your character. It is not reserved for major crises. In fact, its true power is revealed in the accumulation of small, daily victories. The impulse to check your phone when you feel a moment of boredom. Pause. Is this serving my focus, or is it a distraction? The temptation to gossip about a colleague. Pause. Is this action just or kind? The desire to procrastinate on a difficult task. Pause. Does avoiding this discomfort lead to mastery, or does it reinforce a habit of avoidance? Each time you successfully insert this pause and choose the path of virtue over the path of least resistance, you are not just solving an immediate problem. You are literally rewiring your brain, strengthening the neural pathways associated with self-control and deliberate action, and weakening the ones tied to impulsive reactivity. To make this an active part of your life, technology, often a source of distraction, can become your greatest ally in building this habit. The simplicity of this next step belies its transformative potential. I encourage you to open your phone's calendar or reminder app right now. and set a single daily reminder for a Stoic pause. Choose a time that is often hectic or prone to reactive decisions, perhaps mid-morning when your inbox is overflowing, or right after lunch when energy dips. Label the reminder with a simple, powerful phrase like "pause and ask" or "what would virtue do?" When the alert goes off, it is not a command to drop everything and meditate for an hour. It is a 30-second invitation to step out of autopilot. Stop what you are doing, take one conscious breath, and ask yourself the two guiding questions. In this present moment, am I acting in alignment with my principles? Is what I am about to do next serving my long-term goal of mastery? This tiny ritual, repeated daily, acts as a training wheel for your awareness, gradually building the muscle until these checkpoints begin to arise spontaneously throughout your day, ensuring your life is lived by design, not by default. Becoming the architect of your own character is the ultimate aim of all this philosophical work, and it culminates in the creation of a personal philosophy or code of conduct. Up to this point, we have explored a series of powerful Stoic principles, from the dichotomy of control to Amor, Fati. But these ideas remain abstract until you synthesize them into a practical, personalized set of guidelines that you can carry with you into the heat of daily life. A personal code acts as your internal compass, a pre-commitment device you design in moments of clarity to guide you in moments of confusion and temptation. When you are faced with a difficult choice between the comfortable path and the path of growth, you don't have to deliberate from scratch, wrestling with your impulses in real time. Instead, you can simply consult your code. It is a decision-making shortcut that consistently steers you back toward your chosen destination of mastery. The Stoics themselves understood the immense value of having such a clear and concise guide for living. The most famous example is Epictetus's Enchiridion, which translates to the Handbook. It was not a long, theoretical treatise. It was a compact manual compiled by his student Aversion, distilling Epictetus's core teachings into a series of easily remembered rules and maxims. The purpose was practical. A student of Stoicism could carry these principles in their mind, referring to them throughout the day when faced with a moral dilemma or a surge of emotion. It was a tool for constant application, not just occasional study. By creating your own personal Enchiridion, you are engaging in the same timeless practice. You are taking the universal wisdom of Stoicism and tailoring it to the specific contours of your own life, your own weaknesses, and your own aspirations for growth. So, what might this look like in practice? The goal is not to write a lengthy, exhaustive document, but to create a short list of 3 to 5 core principles that are deeply meaningful to you. These are not vague affirmations, but clear, actionable rules written in your own voice. For instance, one of your principles could be, I choose difficulty over ease when it leads to growth. This single sentence can become a powerful filter for countless daily decisions. When faced with the choice between scrolling through social media or reading a challenging book, the code reminds you of your commitment. When the option arises to take on a demanding project at work that will stretch your abilities, the code gives you the courage to say yes. Another principle might be, my worth is determined by my effort, not my outcomes. This rule directly applies the dichotomy of control, freeing you from the anxiety of external validation and refocusing your energy on what you can truly command. A third could be, I welcome obstacles as opportunities to practice a virtue. This transforms your entire perspective on challenges, turning them from nuisances into welcome training sessions for your character. The process of drafting these principles is as valuable as the final product itself. It forces you to clarify what you truly stand for. To begin, find a quiet moment to reflect on the Stoic ideas that have resonated most deeply with you throughout this exploration. Which principle, if you could fully embody it, would have the greatest impact on your life? Is it the discipline of desire, the practice of voluntary discomfort? The love of fate, then, translate that broad concept into a simple, personal vow. Write it down as a commitment to yourself. The act of writing is crucial. It moves the idea from the realm of thought into the realm of intention. It makes it real. Keep this code somewhere. You will see it regularly on a note card on your desk, as the background on your phone, or in the first page of your journal. Let it be a living document that you can revise as you grow, but let it also be a steadfast anchor that holds you to your chosen path. Now, I want to invite you to take the first step in this architectural project right now. Don't feel you need to create the entire code at once. Start with a single, powerful cornerstone. Think about an area of your life where the pull of comfort is particularly strong, and where the pursuit of mastery feels most urgent. It might be in your career, your health, your relationships, or your personal development. Based on that, what is one rule you could draft for your personal code? It should be a clear, concise statement that, if you followed it consistently, would fundamentally shift your trajectory toward growth. Perhaps it is, I will speak with honesty, even when it is uncomfortable. Maybe it is, I will dedicate the first hour of my day to deep work without distraction. Or it could be, I will practice gratitude for one challenge I faced each and every day. Draft that one rule now, either in your mind or, even better, by writing it down. This single sentence is the beginning of you becoming the conscious architect of your character, building a life of mastery, one intentional principle at a time. We don't have to figure this out alone. We have guides. The path of mastery, especially when it runs counter to the prevailing currents of comfort, can feel isolating and uncertain at times. It is easy to lose our way, to question our resolve when the temptation to take the easier path grows strong. This is precisely why the Stoics placed such immense value on the study of exemplars, men and women whose lives serve as living proof of the principles we strive to embody. By immersing ourselves in their stories, we gain more than just inspiration. We acquire a practical roadmap. We see the philosophy in action, not as a dry set of rules, but as a dynamic force that shapes a human life under the most extreme pressures. These figures become our mentors across time, offering silent counsel and a powerful reminder that the virtues we seek are not impossible ideals, but attainable human achievements. Marcus Aurelius himself, in the solitude of his campaign tent, reflected on this very practice. He wrote, "The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing, in that it stands ready for what comes and is not thrown by the unforeseen." And where do we learn this art? He answers by constantly reminding himself to observe and learn from the qualities of those around him. He lists the virtues of his family, his teachers, and even his predecessors, noting their patience, generosity, integrity, and courage. He was actively constructing a personal pantheon of role models, drawing strength from their examples to fortify his own character. This is not about blind hero worship, it is a focused study. It is about identifying the specific qualities you wish to cultivate in yourself, and then seeking out those who have demonstrated them with exceptional clarity. Their lives become a library of wisdom, filled with case studies on how to respond to adversity, how to resist corruption, and how to maintain your inner peace when the external world is in chaos. Consider the profound example of James Stockdale, a United States Navy pilot during the Vietnam War. When his plane was shot down in 1965, he was captured and endured 7.5 years of torture and solitary confinement as a prisoner of war. In that hellish environment, stripped of every physical comfort and subjected to relentless brutality, what did he rely on? He relied on the teachings of Epictetus, which he had studied years before at Stanford University. Stockdale later recounted that as he ejected from his plane, he whispered to himself, "I'm leaving the world of technology and entering the world of Epictetus." He understood immediately that his survival would depend entirely on his mind. The Stoic dichotomy of control became his lifeline. He could not control his captor's actions, the conditions of his cell, or the duration of his imprisonment. But he could absolutely control his own judgments, his integrity, and his refusal to be broken. He used the practice of negative visualization to prepare for the worst, and he embraced the obstacles themselves as the raw material for practicing courage. Stockdale's story is an extreme testament to the practical power of Stoicism. It shows that the philosophy is not a fair-weather discipline. It is a suit of armor for the soul, designed for the most brutal battles life can offer. But you need not look only to prisoners of war or Roman emperors for guidance. Role models of resilience exist in many forms. Perhaps it is a historical figure like Socrates, who chose to drink hemlock rather than compromise his philosophical principles, demonstrating that some truths are worth dying for. Or maybe it is a modern entrepreneur who failed multiple times before achieving success, embodying the Stoic view of failure as feedback. It could be a family member who faced a grave illness with incredible grace and courage, showing you what Amor Fati looks like in a personal crisis. The key is to choose figures whose specific struggles resonate with your own aspirations. If you are working on patience, study the life of Nelson Mandela, who endured 27 years in prison without losing his vision for justice and reconciliation. If you are working on integrity, study the stubbornness of Cato the Younger, who chose to take his own life rather than live under Julius Caesar's dictatorship, becoming a timeless symbol of republican virtue. The purpose of this study is to make the abstract tangible. Reading about courage is one thing. Following the detailed account of how someone like Stockdale found the courage to resist his interrogators day after day is entirely another. It provides a granular, human-scale blueprint that you can adapt to your own lesser challenges. When you are tempted to avoid a difficult conversation at work, you can ask yourself, what would Stockdale do in this situation? How would he apply the dichotomy of control? This mental shortcut connects your minor struggle to a major triumph of the human spirit, instantly putting your challenge into perspective and granting you a sliver of that same resilience. So, to make this an active part of your own journey, I want to offer you a simple but powerful task. Identify one person, either from history or from your own life, whom you deeply admire for their strength of character. It does not have to be a famous philosopher. It could be a teacher, a community leader, or a public figure. Once you have chosen this person, commit to learning just one thing about them this week. Don't feel you need to read an entire biography. Instead, focus your research on a single aspect of their life. How did they handle a specific failure? What was their morning routine? What principle did they refuse to compromise, even under great pressure? By zooming in on a single, concrete example of their virtue in action, you extract a practical lesson that you can immediately apply to your own circumstances. This act of focused study transforms admiration into emulation, turning a distant hero into a direct guide on your own path toward a life of mastery. What if you thanked life for its hardest lessons? This might be the most radical shift in perspective we've discussed yet, taking the common practice of gratitude and turning it into a powerful engine for growth. Typically, we express thanks for the good things: our health, our relationships, the comforts we enjoy, and that is a valuable practice. But Stoicism invites us to go a step further, to actively cultivate gratitude for the very things we normally complain about: the setbacks, the frustrations, the difficult people, and the unforeseen obstacles. This is not about pretending that hardship feels good or ignoring the genuine pain it can cause. It is about recognizing that within every difficulty lies a hidden curriculum, a specific lesson designed to build a part of you that comfort never could. When you learn to be thankful for the challenge itself, you disarm it of its emotional power to discourage you, and you transform it from an enemy into your most demanding and effective teacher. The Stoics viewed every event, especially the trying ones, as an opportunity to practice virtue. A smooth, easy life offers very few chances to cultivate courage, patience, or perseverance. It is only when we are tested that these qualities have a chance to emerge and strengthen. In this light, a challenge is not an interruption to your peace. It is an invitation to build a deeper, more resilient kind of peace. Marcus Aurelius reflected on this constantly, reminding himself to welcome anything that the nature of the universe sent his way, because it was inherently necessary and beneficial for the whole. He might not have used the word gratitude explicitly, but the sentiment is there, a cheerful acceptance that sees the value in all things. When you start to see a difficult boss as someone who is teaching you patience and diplomacy, or a financial pinch as a trainer for your resourcefulness and temperance, your entire relationship with adversity changes. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this preparing me for?" To ground this profound idea in your daily life, consider starting a simple but transformative practice, a challenge gratitude journal. This is not a diary of complaints. It is a dedicated space for mining your difficulties for their hidden gold. The format can be incredibly straightforward. At the end of each day, or perhaps once a week, you choose one significant challenge you faced. You write it down briefly, and then you ask two focused questions. First, what did this difficulty teach me? Perhaps a project failure taught you a crucial technical skill you had overlooked, or a conflict with a friend taught you a deeper nuance about communication and boundaries. Second, what inner quality did this challenge force me to strengthen? This is where you identify the virtue that was called forth. Did the ordeal require you to dig deep for resilience? Did it demand a level of forgiveness you didn't know you possessed? Did it force you to practice humility by asking for help? By consistently engaging in this reflection, you perform a kind of alchemy. You are not just documenting your struggles, you are actively converting them into assets, into evidence of your own growing strength. Over time, you will build a personal record of your resilience that you can look back on whenever a new challenge arises, reminding yourself that you have a history of overcoming and growing. Now, I want you to bring this principle out of the journal and into a moment of quiet reflection right now. Think back over your life and bring to mind one person or one situation that, at the time, caused you significant difficulty. It could be a teacher who was exceptionally strict, a period of unemployment, a personal betrayal, or even a long-term illness. Instead of focusing on the pain it caused, I want you to try a brief mental exercise. Silently, in your mind, offer a word of thanks to that person or for that situation. Thank them for the specific strength you gained as a result. You might say, "Thank you for teaching me how to be self-reliant," or "Thank you for showing me the importance of health," or "Thank you for forcing me to develop thicker skin and greater empathy." This is not about excusing poor behavior or romanticizing trauma. It is about reclaiming your power over the narrative of your own life. It is about acknowledging that you are not just a passive victim of your circumstances, but an active participant who can extract wisdom and strength from even the darkest moments. This act of grateful reflection closes a loop of resentment and opens a new chapter of empowered understanding, solidifying the truth that your greatest challenges have been, and will continue to be, the very tools that forge your mastery. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. When Seneca penned those words 2,000 years ago, he could never have imagined the endless distractions of the digital age, yet his observation cuts deeper today than ever before. We often fall into the trap of believing that our main constraint is time itself, that there simply aren't enough hours in the day, but Seneca and Stoicism as a whole challenges this perception. The real issue is not the quantity of time we are given, but the quality of our attention within that time. We are all granted the same 24 hours, but we fritter away vast portions of this non-renewable resource on activities that drain our energy and contribute nothing to our growth or character. The Stoic approach to time management is therefore not about finding clever life hacks to squeeze more productivity out of every minute. It is a profound philosophical stance that treats time as the one commodity that, once spent, can never be earned back. This realization forces a crucial shift from merely managing a schedule to mindfully stewarding a life. This stewardship begins with a brutally honest audit, not just of your calendar, but of your energy. Time and energy are the twin currencies of a meaningful life, and they are deeply intertwined. You can block out an hour for deep work, but if you have already depleted your mental reserves on social media, arguments, or anxiety over things you cannot control, that hour will be wasted. The Stoic audit asks a simple but penetrating question about each activity. Does this invest my limited resources in the path of mastery, or does it merely consume them on the path of comfort? This goes far beyond work-life balance. It's about identifying the subtle leaks in your daily routine. The 15 minutes here spent refreshing a news feed, the 20 minutes there lost to a television show you are not even enjoying, the mental energy expended worrying about a colleague's opinion. These are the comfortable time wasters, the activities that feel easy and require no effort, but which, in aggregate, represent a massive diversion of your life force away from your true goals. Consider the stark contrast between two different uses of a single free hour. In the first scenario, you finish a task and feel a sense of relief. You pick up your phone, intending to check one message, and soon you are scrolling endlessly through a stream of curated highlights from other people's lives, viral videos, and sensationalized news. The hour passes in a blur. When you put the phone down, you don't feel rested or enriched. You often feel slightly drained, distracted, and empty. This is passive consumption, and it is the epitome of wasting time as Seneca described it. Your energy has been siphoned away without your conscious consent. Now, picture the alternative. That same hour is spent reading a few pages of a challenging book on philosophy or history, grappling with ideas that stretch your mind. Or it is dedicated to practicing a skill, playing a difficult chord progression on the guitar, working through a complex coding problem, or writing a thoughtful journal entry. This hour requires active engagement. It might even feel strenuous at the moment, but when you finish, you feel a sense of tangible accomplishment. Your energy, though spent, feels invested, not depleted. You are richer for the experience, having deposited something of value into the bank of your character and capabilities. This is the core of the Stoic investment strategy. Every moment presents a choice to invest your time and energy in what is virtuous and growth-oriented, or to fritter it away on what is easy and ephemeral. The philosopher Musonius Rufus argued that we should be as careful with our time as a frugal person is with their money, scrutinizing every expenditure to ensure it brings a real return. For the Stoic, the only return that truly matters is the strengthening of your character and your capacity for virtue. This mindset transforms how you view interruptions and distractions. That notification on your phone is not just a piece of information. it is a potential withdrawal from your limited account of focused attention. That gossipy conversation is not just harmless chatter. It is a drain on the emotional energy you could have used for a meaningful connection or a creative pursuit. By seeing your resources as finite and precious, you become naturally more protective of them, more intentional about where you direct them. To move this from a philosophical concept to a practical reality, the most powerful first step is to simply bring awareness to where your time actually goes. We are often terrible judges of this, believing we are productive while unknowingly losing hours to comfortable, low-value activities. Therefore, the challenge is this: for the next 24 hours, act as a detached observer of your own life. You don't need sophisticated tools. A simple notepad will do. Carry it with you and make a brief note of how you spend each hour or even each half hour. Be ruthlessly honest. Record the time spent working, but also the time spent scrolling, the time spent watching television, the time spent in worry, and the time spent in truly restorative activities like conversation or quiet reflection. At the end of the day, review your log. The goal is not to judge yourself harshly, but to see the patterns with clear eyes. You will almost certainly identify one or two comfortable time wasters that consume a surprising portion of your day without adding any value to your life. This single act of awareness is the first and most crucial step in reclaiming your most precious resource and redirecting it toward the deliberate design of a life of mastery. The master is an eternal apprentice. This might sound like a contradiction, but it is the very essence of the Stoic approach to mastery. We often fall into the trap of believing that mastery is a final state, a summit you reach after which you can finally stop climbing and enjoy the view. You get the degree, you earn the title, you achieve the goal, and then you are done. But this is a fixed mindset, a perspective that sees your abilities as a finite resource that you must prove to the world. The Stoic path, in stark contrast, is built upon a growth mindset where the entire point of the journey is not to prove your brilliance, but to perpetually improve your character and your capabilities. The moment you believe you have arrived is the moment you stop growing, and for a Stoic, to stop growing is to stagnate, to begin a slow retreat from a life of virtue and into a life of comfortable, self-satisfied decay. This humble stance of the perpetual student finds its most powerful expression in the example of Socrates, a figure the Stoics deeply admired. His famous declaration, "I know that I am intelligent because I know that I know nothing," is not a statement of ignorance but the very starting point of wisdom. Socrates understood that true intelligence begins with the recognition of the vastness of what you do not know. This intellectual humility is the engine of learning. A person with a fixed mindset who believes they are already an expert closes themselves off to new information that might challenge their self-image. They listen to others not to learn, but to find flaws or to wait for their turn to speak. The lifelong learner, the Socratic Stoic, listens with the active curiosity of a beginner, always asking, "What can this person or this situation teach me?" This is not about a lack of confidence. It is about a profound confidence that is secure enough to admit gaps in knowledge, because the true source of that confidence is not the knowledge you already possess, but your unwavering commitment to the process of gaining more. We can see this beautiful paradox in action when we observe true masters in any field. The most accomplished surgeons attend conferences to learn about new techniques from their colleagues. The most celebrated authors speak about the books they are still learning from. The most innovative engineers remain voraciously curious about failures, their own and others, because they know that each failure contains a lesson that edges them closer to a better solution. These individuals do not rest on their laurels. They see their past achievements not as a final proof of their skill, but as a foundation upon which to build even greater understanding. Their identity is not wrapped up in being the expert, but in being the learner. This attitude is inherently Stoic because it aligns perfectly with the philosophy's core tenet: focus on the process, not the outcome. The outcome of being seen as a master is external and fleeting. The process of learning, of striving, of improving, that is an internal action entirely within your control, and it is a process that can and should continue until your last breath. This commitment to being a student of life extends far beyond professional skills. It applies to our relationships, our emotional intelligence, and our understanding of the world. Perhaps you consider yourself an experienced partner or parent. A fixed mindset in this area would lead you to assume you have it all figured out, to stop listening actively to your loved ones, and to dismiss new approaches to communication or conflict resolution. The Stoic learner, however, approaches even their most familiar relationships with a beginner's mind. They remain open to the idea that they can always learn to be more patient, more understanding, more compassionate. They see every disagreement not as a battle to be won, but as a lesson in a different perspective. This transforms the dynamics of a relationship from a static state into a living, evolving dialogue where both people are growing together. So, let's bring this identity shift directly into your own life. I want you to identify one specific area where you might be holding onto a fixed mindset, where your ego might be preventing you from adopting the posture of a learner. It could be at work, where you feel hesitant to ask a question in a meeting for fear of looking uninformed. It might be in a hobby, where you've plateaued because you're unwilling to go back to the basics and correct a fundamental flaw in your technique. Or it could be in a personal belief you hold strongly, where you automatically dismiss any viewpoint that challenges it. The invitation is to consciously set that ego aside, just for a little while, and deliberately adopt a beginner's mind. What would it look like to approach that area not as an expert who has nothing left to learn, but as a curious novice eager to discover something new? This single act of intellectual humility is one of the most powerful choices you can make on the path of mastery, because it ensures that the path never ends and the journey remains endlessly fascinating. Mastery is not a solitary journey. We are social creatures made for community. The popular image of the Stoic might be a lone figure, enduring hardship in silent isolation, but this is a profound misunderstanding of the philosophy. The Stoics placed immense value on human connection, recognizing that our nature is fundamentally social. They called this concept oikeiosis, a term that signifies our natural affinity for others and our inherent drive to care for the common good. This idea suggests that our personal flourishing is inextricably linked to the well-being of our communities. To pursue a life of mastery entirely on your own is to ignore a fundamental part of your humanity. While the inner citadel of your character is your ultimate refuge, the walls of that citadel are strengthened by the support, the challenge, and the shared purpose found in fellowship with others. This belief in our interconnectedness was a cornerstone of Stoic thought. The philosophers argued that we are not isolated atoms bumping against each other in a void, but rather like limbs on a single body, designed to work together for the health of the whole. Marcus Aurelius, despite the immense solitude of his power, constantly reminded himself of his duty to his fellow human beings. He wrote, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." This powerful analogy reframes our individual pursuits. Your growth in wisdom, your cultivation of courage, your practice of justice, these are not just personal achievements. They are contributions to a larger social organism. When you become stronger, more resilient, and more virtuous, you elevate the capacity of your entire community. This perspective transforms the pursuit of mastery from a self-centered ambition into a social responsibility, adding a deeper layer of meaning to every difficult choice you make. The practical power of community lies in its ability to provide two essential elements that are difficult to generate alone: encouragement and accountability. On the path of mastery, there will be days when your resolve wavers, when the comfort of the easy path sings a seductive song. In those moments, a community of like-minded individuals acts as a lighthouse, guiding you back to your chosen course. Hearing about someone else's struggles and triumphs reminds you that you are not alone in the endeavor. Their progress can inspire your own, and a word of support can be the difference between giving up and persevering. Perhaps even more importantly, a good community holds up a mirror, challenging your complacency. It is easy to lie to yourself about your progress when you are the only one keeping score. But when you are part of a group that shares your values, you have people who will gently but firmly call you out on your excuses. They will notice when you are avoiding a challenge or rationalizing a lapse in discipline. This loving accountability is invaluable, as it punctures the bubbles of self-deception we all tend to create and pushes us to live up to our own highest standards. Seeking out this kind of fellowship can take many forms, each offering its own unique benefits. You might consider joining a local or online Stoic philosophy group, where you can read and discuss the texts with others, discovering new layers of meaning through shared interpretation. For a more focused approach on goals, a mastermind group, a small, trusted circle of peers who meet regularly to set objectives, report on progress, and offer strategic advice, can be incredibly effective. These groups create a structure of commitment that makes it much harder to let your goals slide, but you need not formalize it to this extent. Sometimes, the most powerful community is built through simple, intentional conversations. Making a habit of discussing personal growth, Stoic principles, and your aspirations for mastery with a close friend or partner can transform that relationship into a powerful source of mutual support. The key is to move these discussions beyond surface-level complaints and into the realm of shared intention and constructive feedback. To truly integrate this principle, the next step is to move from the general idea to a specific, actionable connection. I want you to think about your life and identify one person with whom you could initiate a conversation about your journey toward mastery. This person could be a friend you admire for their integrity, a colleague who seems to share a similar desire for growth, or even a family member you feel you can be vulnerable with. The goal is not to deliver a lecture on Stoicism, but to open a dialogue. You could start by sharing something you are currently struggling with, a desire for comfort you are trying to overcome, or an obstacle you are attempting to see as an opportunity. Then simply ask for their perspective. By taking this small but courageous step, you are actively building the very community that will support you. You are transforming a solitary pursuit into a shared adventure, reminding yourself that the path of mastery, though walked with your own 2 feet, is a road meant for fellowship. Think of solitude not as loneliness or isolation, but as an active rest for the soul. In our hyper-connected world, our attention is a commodity constantly being bid on by notifications, news cycles, and the endless demands of others. This relentless external noise creates a static that drowns out the most important voice you will ever hear, your own inner reason. The Stoics understood that to live a life of intention, you must periodically disconnect from the crowd to reconnect with yourself. This is not about running away from your responsibilities, but about creating a sacred space where you can remember what those responsibilities are truly for. It is in the quiet that the compass of your character can recalibrate, pointing you back toward your true north of virtue and mastery, away from the magnetic pull of comfortable distractions. Seneca, in his moral letters, spoke directly to the necessity of this inward retreat. He advised, "You must retreat into yourself as much as possible. Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you are capable of improving. The process is mutual, for people learn while they are teaching." Notice that he begins with the self. You cannot be a positive force in your community. You cannot teach or lead effectively if your own inner world is in chaos. This solitude is the foundational practice that allows you to gather your resources, to sort through the impressions of the day, and to distinguish between the whispers of your own wisdom and the deafening shouts of popular opinion. It is how you cultivate the inner citadel, making it a place of quiet strength rather than a besieged fortress. The practical application of this is beautifully simple, yet for many incredibly challenging. I propose a practice of spending just 10 to 15 minutes each day in complete, intentional silence. This does not mean sitting in a quiet room while your mind races through your to-do list or replays an argument from earlier. That is just internal noise. The practice is to find a space where you can be free from external stimulation, no phone, no music, no podcast, no book. You simply sit, perhaps focusing on your breath, and observe the thoughts that arise without judgment. You are not trying to stop thinking. You are creating a distance between yourself and your thoughts. You are the sky, and your thoughts are just passing clouds. In this space, you might notice how much of your mental energy is consumed by worries about things outside your control, or by desires for trivial comforts. This awareness is the first step toward reclaiming that energy. This daily pause serves as a filter for your life. When you return to the world after this period of silence, the external noises, the urgent but unimportant emails, the social pressures, the latest crisis, seem to have lost some of their urgency. You can see them more clearly for what they are, passing phenomena that do not necessarily require a reaction from you. You create a buffer between the event and your response, allowing you to act from a place of principle rather than impulse. It is in these quiet moments that you can reaffirm your commitment to the path of mastery. You can ask yourself, away from the influence of others, is the life I am living aligned with the values I hold most dear? The answer that comes in the silence is often the truest one you will hear. Therefore, the challenge for you is to make this philosophy tangible. This week, I want you to consciously schedule one short period of intentional solitude. It doesn't have to be a grand meditation retreat. It can be as simple as waking up 15 minutes earlier to sit with a cup of tea before the day begins, or taking a walk in a park without your headphones. The key is intention. You are not just killing time, you are actively creating a space for clarity. During this time, do not strive for any great insight or mystical experience. Your only task is to be present with yourself. Notice the urge to reach for your phone, acknowledge it, and let it pass. Observe the chatter of your mind without getting caught up in its stories. This practice is a direct rebellion against the culture of constant consumption and distraction. It is a quiet, powerful declaration that you are the author of your attention, and therefore the architect of your inner world. By gifting yourself this silence, you are not withdrawing from life. You are preparing to engage with it more deeply, more wisely, and with a renewed sense of purpose. Moving from theory to a lived philosophy is the final and most crucial step in this entire journey. It is the difference between owning a map of a territory and actually setting foot on the path step by step. We have explored a rich landscape of Stoic principles, from the foundational dichotomy of control to the profound acceptance of Amor Fati. But if these ideas remain as separate concepts in your mind, they will lack the power to truly transform your daily existence. The goal now is integration, to weave these individual threads into a single, sturdy rope that you can use to pull yourself forward day after day toward a life of authentic mastery. This is not about a dramatic, overnight overhaul of your entire life. In fact, that approach is almost guaranteed to lead to burnout and abandonment. The Stoic way is far more gentle and far more effective. It understands that excellence is not a single act but a habit, as Aristotle, a profound influence on the Stoics, wisely noted. What we repeatedly do, not what we occasionally aspire to, ultimately forges our character. This focus on consistency over perfection is liberating. It frees you from the pressure of having to implement every single practice we have discussed starting tomorrow. That would be overwhelming and entirely counterproductive. Instead, the wisdom lies in strategic selection and gradual building. Think of yourself as an architect who has been given a magnificent set of blueprints. You do not try to raise the entire structure in a single day. You begin by pouring a solid foundation, perhaps the practice of the dichotomy of control, and then you carefully lay one brick at a time, allowing each layer to set before adding the next. Maybe the next brick is a 5-minute morning reflection, and the one after that is a commitment to 1 hour of deep work. The power comes from the cumulative effect of these small, consistent actions. A single cold shower is a curious experiment. A weekly practice of voluntary discomfort is building resilience. One evening review is a moment of insight. A nightly habit of journaling is a process of continuous self-refinement. To make this vision tangible, let's sketch out what a hypothetical ideal day might look like when these Stoic practices are woven seamlessly into its fabric. This is not a rigid prescription, but an illustrative example of how these principles can animate your waking hours. The day begins not with a jarring alarm and an immediate reach for the phone, but with a few moments of silence. This is the morning meditation, the premeditatio malorum. You lie in bed and mentally rehearse the potential challenges of the day ahead, a difficult conversation, a complex task, and you visualize yourself meeting them with patience and courage. You then set a simple intention, a virtue you wish to embody. Today, I will focus on acting with justice in all my interactions. This entire ritual might take only 5 minutes, but it sets a tone of purposeful awareness for the entire day ahead. As the day progresses, the principles continue to guide your actions. During your work block, you fiercely guard your attention, practicing the deep focus that mastery requires. You turn off notifications, and when the urge to check social media arises, you recognize it as an undisciplined desire for comfort and gently return your focus to the task at hand. This is the discipline of ascent in action. At lunch, you might choose a simpler meal than you are used to, a small act of voluntary discomfort that reminds you of your independence from mere sensory pleasure. When an unexpected obstacle arises, a project setback, a frustrating email, you pause. Instead of reacting with anger, you see it through the lens of the obstacle is the way, asking yourself what virtue this challenge is inviting you to practice. Is it patience, creativity, resilience? This reframing turns a moment of frustration into a moment of opportunity. As the evening winds down, you engage in the Stoic review. You look back over the day with a kind but honest eye. Where did you live in alignment with your morning intention? Perhaps you handled that difficult conversation with more fairness than you expected. And where did you fall short? Maybe you lost your temper in a minor traffic delay. The goal is not self-criticism, but learning. You acknowledge the misstep without judgment, extract its lesson, and reaffirm your commitment to do better tomorrow. Finally, as you prepare for sleep, you might take a moment to practice a brief negative visualization, reflecting on the temporary nature of your comforts and feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the simple fact of your existence. This daily cycle, from intentional morning to reflective evening, creates a self-reinforcing loop of growth, where each day's experiences become the fuel for the next day's progress. The true measure of this video's value will not be in what you learn today, but in what you do tomorrow. Therefore, the most important task is to translate this understanding into a personal, actionable plan. The sheer number of ideas can be paralyzing if you try to tackle them all at once. So, let's make it simple and powerful. Look back over the principles we have discussed. Which one resonated with you most deeply? Which one, if you could fully integrate it into your life, would have the most significant impact? It might be the practice of Memento Mori to clarify your priorities, or the discipline of focusing on what you can control to reduce anxiety, or the commitment to finding a community for support. Choose just one, not two, not three, one. Now, with that single principle in mind, I want you to make a specific implementation plan for the next month. Do not let this be a vague intention. Get a piece of paper or open a new note on your device and write it down. Your plan should answer 3 questions. First, what is the specific Stoic principle I will focus on? Second, what is one concrete action I will take each day to practice it? For example, if your principle is the dichotomy of control, your daily action might be to write down one thing you will focus your energy on and one thing you will let go of. If your principle is voluntary discomfort, your action might be to take a cold shower every morning or to walk instead of drive for one short trip. Third, how will I hold myself accountable? Will you track it in a journal? Will you check in with a friend once a week? By making your commitment this specific, you move it from the realm of wishful thinking into the realm of tangible reality. This one-focused effort, sustained for 30 days, will do more to build a life of Stoic mastery than a lifetime of theoretical understanding. It is the first and most important step in designing a life that is truly your own. And so we arrive at the heart of the matter, the simple yet profound choice that lies before you in every moment of every day. Designing a life that prioritizes mastery over comfort is not a single, monumental decision made once and forgotten. It is a continuous, deliberate practice of choosing character growth and virtuous action over the siren call of transient ease. It is the decision to see yourself not as a passive passenger on a journey dictated by external forces, but as the active architect of your own soul, laying one intentional brick at a time. This is the ultimate promise of Stoicism, that by turning inward and mastering what is truly yours to command, your judgments, your desires, your actions, you build a fortress of character that no external storm can ever breach. We began by laying the essential foundation, the dichotomy of control. This is the mental compass that allows you to navigate any situation by instantly distinguishing between what is within your power and what is not. It is the liberation that comes from pouring your energy solely into your own efforts and releasing your attachment to the outcomes. From that foundation, we built resilience through the brave practice of voluntary discomfort, training our minds to welcome slight hardships so that we would not fear greater ones. We reframed our relationship with failure, seeing it not as a verdict but as the most valuable teacher we will ever have. We explored the discipline of governing our desires, ensuring they serve our long-term flourishing rather than our short-term cravings. And we learned to love our fate with Amor, Fati, embracing every twist and turn of our unique path as the necessary raw material for building a life of meaning. This path, make no mistake, is the more difficult one. It asks you to walk uphill when a smooth, downhill road is readily available. But it is on that uphill climb that you discover your true strength, your capacity for courage, and the deep, durable satisfaction that comes from earning your progress. The comfortable path may be easier on the feet, but it weakens the legs for the journey ahead. The path of mastery, while rocky and steep, forges a resilience and a sense of purpose that cannot be found in any amount of convenience. It leads not to a life free from trouble, but to a life made strong and significant by the very troubles it overcomes. This is not a life of deprivation. It is a life of liberation, freedom from the opinions of others, freedom from the fear of loss, and freedom to become the best version of yourself. The Roman philosopher Seneca, in one of his most powerful letters, captured the spirit of this journey when he wrote, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." This is the final, empowering insight. The difficulty of the path is not a barrier to be feared, but an invitation to be accepted. It is an invitation to dare to live intentionally, to dare to grow through challenge, and to dare to find your flourishing not in what you acquire, but in who you become. If this exploration of Stoic wisdom has resonated with you, if you feel that pull toward a more purposeful and resilient way of living, then you are already on the path. The next step is to take one of these principles and put it into practice today. Start small, but start. And if you'd like to continue this journey together, I invite you to subscribe to this channel for more guides on applying ancient philosophy to modern life. I would also love to hear from you in the comments below. What is one way you are choosing mastery over comfort in your own life? Sharing our experiences helps us all grow stronger. Thank you for your time and your attention. Go forth and build a life of